everyone please rise to pledge allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moment of silence, please. Thank you. Need to adopt the agenda?
Sir, if I may, I want to make sure the board is aware that there is an item that I added this morning. First thing, item K3. Listed addendum, it's a letter of congratulations to Wayland Blue Ridge Baptist Association. They sent a letter to us a few months back requesting this, and I've added to the agenda and added a draft letter for consideration of the board to send to them. Also, I've heard over the last couple months from Castleton Fire and Rescue related to the snowplow that the board graciously allowed them to use over the last year. That plow's been in use for over a year, and now, given it's been in use for 12 months, the board can surplus it to Castleton and transfer ownership to them and stay in keeping with the DGS rules. If the board would like to follow through with that, you can add an item K4.
Anybody have any comments about it?
I would just move that we adopt the agenda as presented, plus those two amendments, K3 and K4.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Approval of minutes.
I had was on the minutes of April 22nd. I think it's page 3. And I think Crystal got it right. It said, when Harold Bebout, Hampton District, I think he identified himself in Hampton, but I do believe he's in Piedmont.
That's correct.
So I might make a suggestion that we, on page 3 of 7, just change his district to Piedmont.
I think a similar thing happened with Karen Sanborn, that she identified herself as Jackson District. However, she lives in Piedmont District. And then the only change I had for those 7 minutes was that the president of the Rappahannock Animal Welfare League, her full name was Cheryl Lynn Herman, not just Cheryl Herman. Those are the only changes I have.
I'll just point out the obvious, the May 6th meeting minutes are not yet available. We'll have those for you next week.
If no one else has any other changes, I move we adopt the minutes as presented in both sets. Yes.
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Okay, public comment. Anyone wishing or desiring to speak, simply raise your hand and when recognized, state your name, the district that you're from, direct your comments to the board, and I'll open public comment. Yes.
I'm Patty Hardy from Hampton. I'm from the Piedmont and Jackson districts.
They're right beside
Have I left anything out? I'm wearing two hats today. One is from the Rappahannock News, and I would like to ask that after a roll call, not a roll call, but a voice vote, that Mr. Curry maybe summarize what that vote was. If it's just to say 3 ayes, 2 nays, whatever it was. Because sometimes I don't always get it right. And then also that way it'll be correct on the video. I'll take that hat off. And I'll put on my hat as Artistic Director of the RAC Community Theater. I wanted to speak to you about the county building consultant scope of work document that you'll be talking about later. As you know, RAC has rented the old church right down the street from the county for many years for use as community theater productions and also really other valuable community functions, such as the Mitchell Grant Awards and other kinds of things. So on behalf of RAC, I want to express to you our strong interest in continuing to use the old church building for the foreseeable future. We understand, of course, that your current focus is to assess the county's space needs vis-a-vis the current building inventory. At the same time, we firmly believe the theater delivers a valuable service to the community that should be honored and preserved, and we hope you'll take this into consideration as you go through the whole building evaluation and use study. I know there are some folks in this room who have been in some of our productions or have family members that have been in some of our productions, especially the Christmas productions, where we could have a cast of 30 or more, mostly children, and they've been very valuable and very well received for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to discuss?
Good afternoon, my name is Keir Whitson, and I'm a resident of the Hampton District, also a candidate for the Hampton District Board of Supervisors seat. In that regard, I want to thank John for his service the last 3.5 years. Really appreciate it. Back in 2012, before John came on the board, Brian Lee appointed me to serve on the Rappahannock County Water and Sewer Authority. And I served on the Sewer Authority for, I believe, almost 5 years. Very proud of my service and played an important role in the establishment and management of some of the larger commercial accounts in Sperryville that are tied into the sewer system, including Pendered Brewing, Hopkins Ordinary Ale Works, Before and After Cafe, among others. I mention all of this because in its current form, the comprehensive plan makes scant mention of wastewater treatment facilities in the county. And I also mention this because, at least to the best of my knowledge, the Board of Supervisors currently plays little or no oversight role with regard to wastewater treatment facilities in our county. In a county of 7,000 people, we have, I would say, a disproportionate amount of wastewater infrastructure. You have a system in Sperryville, now 30 years old. You have a relatively new system in the town of Washington. And then 2 separate systems at the schools that are sand filter systems. This isn't exciting stuff to talk about, but it's very, very important. And I wanted to simply come before you and point out the fact that, at least based on my experience in the last 5 to 10 years, the Board of Supervisors has not been that active. This isn't criticism, it's just reality. It's not been that active in these facilities, managing them, discussing them with the county water and sewer authority on the one hand, or the town of Washington on the other. Needless to say, these facilities, especially in a county our size, are a linchpin to the healthy function of the villages in which they're located and the schools as well. And so my simple request to you, and I don't know if it's possible, you would have to consult with your attorney, but I would encourage you to consider putting a representative, at least on the County Water and Sewer Authority, to become more involved in making sure these facilities are maintained properly and that there's a plan for the future. Sperryville in particular concerns me. I know Ms. Smith is cognizant of this. I've talked with her in the past about it. It's a 30-plus-year-old system. When I was on the authority, we managed to save an equalization tank that collapsed during a big storm. We managed to save it with only a $25,000 expenditure, but other critical components of that plant may not be saved in a similar fashion if something catastrophic were to happen. So I think it's important that we all get ahead of a potential problem there in Sperryville. The school systems, I'm sure Ms. Grimsley can tell you, are aging as well. Unfortunately, the town of Washington is in much better shape than those others. But I simply want to encourage you to raise awareness among yourselves that those facilities are out there and they're critical to the economic vitality of our buildings and the function of our schools. Thank you very much.
Anybody else care to speak?
Good afternoon. I'm Melanie Kupchiansky, and I'm from the Stonewall Hawthorne District. And I've come today to ask for your vote. I would like to serve on the Planning Commission for the available seat in my district. I have over 30 years of business experience, and I'm confident with my skills and my abilities to do the work that is at the commission right now. I work well in a team and amongst diverse stakeholders. I believe, however, that my unique qualification is a voice of continuity. This year, our land has been farmed by my family for 212 years. It's a long time. I understand the role of caretaker and steward. And our legacy is to pass the torch to the next generation and to provide them with a framework that enables them to be successful in their stewardship. My father, Gordon Thornhill, managed the Rappahannock Farmers Co-op, and in that role he served the agricultural community for over 40 years. And anyone who shopped there, I guess he serviced the entire community, but I guess his greatest love was also that he was a farmer. My brothers, C.G. and David, are farming our land with successful agricultural business there now. I work with them, and I also have a floriculture business. I would represent the agricultural perspective on the Planning Commission, which I believe is not represented at this time. In the last several days, people who don't know me have asked me who I am and my political viewpoint. And I wanted to share, I would consider myself a conservative and an independent. Our family values and our business have taught us to utilize all the resources we have, to utilize them efficiently, to utilize them, put them to their greatest use, to operate within our means in order to be sustainable. And I think the same model is applicable to our community as well. What we have here in Rappahannock is golden. I want to see us to come together to preserve what we all treasure here, to provide for what we need, and to do it within our means. And I'm not sure what all those answers are. Mr. Parrish is my supervisor, and I believe I have put you in an uncomfortable position, so I apologize for that. And I do want to say that Mr. Light, my application is not intended to diminish or detract from his service, I think, in the last 8 years to the commission. So I would ask for your vote. I'm willing to roll up my sleeves to complete the work that's underway in the Planning Commission and to provide a voice of continuity and to also have a perspective from the agricultural standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak? Yes. The lady.
I never hear this thing. Well, yeah,
Sorry, I did that once
Sorry
before,
about
I
that.
forgot.
she will register Hampton District. First of all, I want to make a comment on the code of conduct with a bit of humor. It's springtime, and I guess the code of conduct has been put out to pasture to enjoy the sweetness of Rappahannock for a while. I hope in due course it will be readdressed, because I talked to a realtor from Prince William County a while back and told her that there's some difficulty in getting this thing adopted. And she expressed surprise because she said, you know, realtors have a code of conduct, code of ethics that they have to adhere to. And so she really didn't see that there should be a problem here. What I have detected is that there seems to be a bit of fear in having something like this in place. And in my experience in the corporate world, when you have that element of fear, that is then going to suppress a lot of creativity or spontaneity in being able to address things that we critically need. So that's all for that. The other thing I wrote down, the way the upcoming, in the last Board of Supervisors meeting, the way the upcoming planning committee term of Gary Light was rather inadequately addressed. There was a mythology there that isn't regular to see if the person in the term ending would like it to be reappointed. What I heard was a comment about procedures in question. Isn't that just supposed to be advertised in going forward? I found it disturbing that there was no acknowledgement of Mr. Light's being able to pull this committee together along with a new member working toward the committee goal well to get the comprehensive draft finished for public hearing so that it can be completed. Then after what had been complained about for some 12 years, so we're on our way to be able to get this thing done. And I think that's a major accomplishment. What we need to do, in my opinion, is to keep that momentum going by keeping Mr. Light. I attended the Planning Commission's work session, and while I was apprehensive about having a planning consultant on board, I'm confident that that would be a plus in getting our comprehensive plan relatively up to speed and, more importantly, compliant with Virginia law. Specifically, Todd Gordon's comment, I believe that's his name, was that one qualitative statement to fill a specific requirement in the code. In other words, that's a way that you can accomplish some things that we possibly can't do, or it's not in our interest at this time to do, but we need to address that specific element in the requirement. And so by his saying that, it gave me confidence that he would be able to, that his intentions are good and that he could provide a good path going forward to accomplish this goal. To my question about the legal requirement being able to be easily addressed or to be addressed, Mr. Gordon said yes. Our county government is small, our staff is small. The factor of economy of scale is important here. We have an adequate way to proceed, so we don't need to try and match the huge planning staff of Fauquier and the like. I think we have, it seems from what I've heard, is that we have the capability of addressing what needs to be done. And there's also the issue of economic growth, which is what the young man brought up, and that's an important element. So I hope we can go forward that way. Thank you.
Behind. Deep.
My name is John Capielli, I'm from the Hampton District. My question is other than one apparently accident where somebody's background was published on the website of the county, which Mr. Curry corrected and was printed in the BRI, there's no information out there for anybody to see what the background of any of the candidates are, what their names are, what their backgrounds are, anything. The only people that have that information are you Board of Supervisors. How do we know that the better candidate would be selected other than just hope?
We vote just like everyone else. There's no one, we don't make those decisions.
No, I'm saying you vote, absolutely, which is the way it should be. The question still is that where are your candidates from and what are their backgrounds? That we know that, as the public, that the best candidate is voted for. That's all. That's the totality of the question. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to try to answer that?
I know that we don't typically treat this as a question and answer period,
I agree.
Mr. Chairman.
I agree.
However, I would say there's always open press if people want to make more information about themselves known. There's also local listservs and also Facebook where people can share information. Folks can write letters to the editor if they're not trusting their information over to a reporter. So there are lots of different ways for people to get their information out if they're interested in seeking an appointment on any government body. We have to respect people's privacy, and there's some reasons we don't post all of that. And I respect that, and all these other avenues are open if people are so interested. Thank you, Mr. Capio.
Good afternoon, Board. I'm Dee Deakins from Hampton District. I'm going to forget this thing here. I'm going to address two issues. One is the cell tower placement, and the other one is ridgetop development. I just completed an annual long-distance motorcycle trip, and I am now an authority in every shape and size of cell towers across this country. And they have one thing in common: they're all hideous. And the only place that they belong is on an established infrastructure. Maybe alongside the highway, or a firehouse, or on the backside of Western Kansas or something like that, but not in these ancient and sacred mountains. They just destroy the landscape. And I did get a chance to see this wonderful balloon that was advertised before I left, because I was gone for a long time. But I can only imagine, especially since it was on Etten Farms, I can only imagine that it's definitely the wrong place to place something. I can't remember when we had this issue before, when Sprint made the first application, might have been 15 years ago, might have been 10. I was in opposition then, I'm in more opposition now. These things do not serve the benefit of the county. They serve a very small part of the population. We're not going to get broadband off of them. And like I said, I've said 1,000 times, if you want cell coverage, go 25 miles to move to the park here, go to Fairfax. It's one of the things that makes us so completely unique. And I'm going to tell you, I spent a lot of time on the back of two wheels. And what we have here doesn't exist, does not exist in this country. And I've seen every back road of this freaking country. Sprint at least made an attempt in their initial stages of disguising it. And they disguised them in tall silos. And we can't even come up with a monopole. I had parking lot duty for the Sperry Fest on the backside of Sperryville. And that was my first exposure to that thing that's sticking up over there. And God almighty, we got to come up with $15,000 to paint that thing. Camouflage it or something, or put a flag on it. Like a car dealership or something like that. That's certainly the wrong spot for it. And there's a lady in the county who's been an opponent of this cell tower, and I think somebody has to pay attention to her. I can't remember her last name. Her first name is Cynthia. And she started to alert us to the dangers of 5G. And so I talked to a good friend of mine who's pretty knowledgeable. I said, what's this 5G all about? And he started telling me that there was basically short waves, and they're going to involve a concentration of towers. And that's what I saw across country. I saw clusters of 3. And so I can see this county in the future being inundated with these towers. And a blanket of microwave, which I don't know much about, but a blanket of microwave facing this county. And I understand in the 1986 Communication Act we have to do it, but we don't have to bend over to these people. We can control these people, we can make it difficult for them to come in here. So enough said for that. And so for the 1000th time, I'm going to bring up the rooftop development. And I implore this board to enforce the rules that were enforced on me 35 years ago about the 14% slope. If the majority of the property is less than 14%, you can build on it. If the majority of your property is more, it's 14%, you can't build on it. And you folks are stewards. This word's been brought up before, you're stewards. And when you turn around and you give the rights to these mountains to somebody to build some ridiculous edifice, I've been a builder all my life, and I'm going to tell you, some of the ugliest houses I've seen in America are here. I was one on my road. And if you're going to continue to allow that to happen, then that's where you really need a conservation district. That's where you really need to restrict them. Restrict them as an architectural historical district. Restrict their paint jobs so you don't see a white gable 50 miles away. Restrict their lighting, but be consistent. Enforce that 14%. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Ruth Welch. I'm from Stonewall Hawthorne District, and I'm on the board of the Rappahannock County Recreational Facilities Authority, otherwise known as the Park Board. And we've been doing a lot of updates in the park. I think I spoke a couple months ago. But I wanted to bring to your attention an event that we're having going on this Saturday from 9 to 3. It's called Rush River Conservation Day, and it's totally free. We're asking that folks that want to attend get a ticket on Eventbrite, and tickets are going fast at the great price of $0. We're going to be having basically free fly fishing and pole lessons. We're getting 32 fishing equipment from the Virginia Department of Inland Fisheries. It's also being sponsored by the Old-Rag Master Naturalists, who are going to do spray monitoring. Also by Ratflow, who's going to do water quality testing. We're having Rush River Fly, South River Fly, and Orvis give us some extra fishing equipment to lend for free. Two generous folks in the county, Keir Whitson, I think he's here today, is that right? And Sean Nick of Rush River Fly are going to be stocking the Rush River with trout. So we're going to have a good day. Also sponsored by PEC and Friends of the Rappahannock. So if any of you, we're trying to focus this on children. So if you have any children that would like to learn to fish, we ask that a parent or an adult be with these children. And we're going to have a fun day out on the Rush River. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else here to speak? For public comment, closed. And then Dr. Shannon.
Dr. Shannon speaks. Good afternoon from your Panther family. I'm so ecstatic to say that summer break is underway. Yes. We had a wonderful culmination of our school year by way of an amazing graduation ceremony. And I'm pleased to say that it was freezing in there before the 1,000 people gathered in there. So the HVAC system is working great. Thank you so much for all your help getting that all straightened out last summer. That was awesome. Thank you, Ms. Smith, for attending. Your presence was very much appreciated. This was a very special class, and it was very difficult to send them off. But I know they will be very successful and hope they'll come back home and tell us all about their journey. Some end of the year student accolades for you. May 22nd was our Spring Sports Awards ceremony, and it was held in the auditorium of the high school. The following students were recognized. For softball, Miranda Jenkins and Abby McClary were named MVPs, and Taylor Settle earned the Coaches Award. For baseball, Brett Midkiff and Grant Lillard were named MVPs. Girls soccer, Sarah East and Savannah Hensley earned Coaches Awards. Boys soccer, Michael Reed and Matthew Parator earned Coaches Awards. For track, Belle Perdue, Rachel Weghorst, and Bryce Jones earned Coaches Awards. Richard Lillard was presented the Male Athlete of the Year Award. Olivia Atkins earned the Female Athlete of the Year Award. Michael Reed earned the Neil Burke Award. Jeff Atkins was named the Impact Coach of the Year. Cameron Wayland was awarded the Unsung Hero Award, and if you follow Facebook, he attended the Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Conference at JMU just this past weekend. He earned a scholarship to attend. Sarah East earned the Sportsmanship Award, and the Rap News Scholar Athlete of the Year was Bryce Jones, also a valedictorian. So it was a very successful year for sports. We're so proud of the hard work and dedication of all our student athletes. Tomorrow, our girls are competing in 2 state quarterfinal events. Soccer will be at West Point at 6 p.m. and softball at the other Rappahannock at 6 p.m. also. Best of luck to our Lady Panthers because they are on the prowl for a state championship. The end of year was full of wonderful ceremonies and celebrations. The Rapp Sheriff's Office Dare Day event was a huge success, and we were thrilled that the weather finally cooperated for this event. It's been 2 years since we've been able to have it. Kids had a blast interacting with our first responders, all the while being sprayed by a fire hose, getting up close and personal with a porcupine and a snake. Yes, really. Getting their faces painted, enjoying the bouncy houses, eating ice cream and cotton candy, and having fun exploring emergency service vehicles. Our CPS thanks the Sheriff's Office for all their hard work in coordinating this event. RCHS celebrated the last day of school with a morning of fun and games at the Pride Bash. This is an event where students enjoy a variety of activities, obstacles, music, and games in order to celebrate positive school climate. Pride stands for Positive Relationships Inspire a Drive for Excellence, and we stand committed to consistently working toward fostering a safe and positive school environment for all students and staff. The Pride program is sponsored by the Fayette Foundation and in part by Headwaters. We thank these organizations for funding this program, and it has truly instilled a sense of pride in our school community. On May 30th, we held our annual end-of-year staff picnic, where we celebrated our collective and individual successes as well, and recognized years of service and special awards. The following staff members were recognized: Sue Atkins for 15 years of service, Bobby Glasker, Shelley Schenkel, and Bertha Jacobs for 20 years of service, Linda and Chuck Way for 25 years of service, and Carol Johnson, my assistant Sue, for 35 years of service. I won't tell you what I did to her for that service without. Our 2 retirees were recognized, Mark Ramey and Patty Waddell. We renamed the Above and Beyond Award, which was begun by Dr. Bob Chappell when he retired as superintendent. So we renamed the award the Dr. Bob Chappell Above and Beyond Award, so that his legacy will continue on through the recognition of staff and volunteers who go above and beyond for our school system. This year's recipients who were nominated by the staff and selected by a teacher committee were Elaine Snyder for the volunteer category, Kim Vest for support staff, and Catherine Todd and Patty Waddell for the licensed staff category. The Liz Toll Award went to Kim Vest, and the Salem Education Foundation awarded Catherine Todd and Patty Waddell a financial award for earning the Dr. Bob Chappell Above and Beyond Licensed Staff Award. Finally, Commit to Be Fit awarded the Wellness Awards to the winning staff team of the 6-month Staff Wellness Challenge. Principal Ben Temple, Tim Stockdale, Erica Parkinson, Tammy Racer, Tasha White, and Colton Ball were on that team. And they earned the most points, and sometimes I feel like it was sabotage because I had a team too, the Commit to Be Fit team, they beat us. But I swear it's because Ben Temple kept sending donuts and like pie up to Central Office. It's not nice. Sabotage. We had a wonderful school year, and as of right now, all preliminary SOL test results show that we calculated locally indicate full accreditation for the 6th year in a row. So I'm very pleased. We may be on summer break, but we have a lot of work to do to get ready for next year. Make sure you call ahead if you wish to go to the elementary school. We have a lot of construction going on, so thank you and your support of our budget, the capital improvement, the PAYGO accounts, the tile work, the paint is going to make a huge difference. When you come to the elementary school next year, it's going to look like a brand new school. So thank you so much. All your support for our school and our students, and we're not going to let you down. Do you have any questions for me?
I just wanted to say how very lovely the graduation ceremony was on Friday evening.
Thank you so much.
It was really a good time. And the 7th grade graduation on Thursday was also very nice.
Yes, yes, special attendance at that.
And I had a good house.
Yes.
So thank you. It means a lot to the parents, I know.
No presentation. Finance director's report.
So the treasurer's reports are included in the agenda packet. Consistent with past reports produced by the treasurer, we've tracked the cash balance graph over the last year and a half, and you can see, just like last month, we are tracking below FY 2018, which makes sense because you are spending some of your savings on some of these one-time expenditures that we've discussed, such as public safety radios and whatnot. So we will expect to continue to see that track below 2018, although revenue is very strong, continues to be very strong. We've collected more in property taxes than we budgeted, which has a lot to do with the strong collection efforts being conducted by the treasurer. Expenditures are on path, and the changes that the board made at the May meeting with some of the transfers are reflected in the report. And only one area I'm tracking right now that's close that we may have to make adjustments at your next meeting to wrap up the fiscal year. And that's the BZA, small dollar amount, but we might have to transfer money from somewhere over to that to make sure it comes in under budget. Happy to answer any questions.
The money back from the jail, is that expected?
Yes, I was going to speak to that during my update, but I can speak to it now. The Finance and Personnel Committee from the Jail Board, which is the 3 county administrators who have been working on the FY18 true up over the last several months. And the way the funds work at the jail, each year we budget an expected usage percentage for the last 3 years and apply that to a projected budget to determine how much each locality will be invoiced. So at the end of each fiscal year, we then go back and see what were the actual costs and revenues and what was the actual 3-year usage, and then we'll do a true up to provide a credit or provide an extra invoice so that each locality pays their proper share. In doing that this year, they had a new member, it was me, and realized that maybe it wasn't being done properly. And so we backtracked on that to FY15, recalculated the true up from FY15 through 18, and that netted overall $145,000 to our good. I think like $1.6 million for Warren and negative $275,000 for Shenandoah. And that has mostly to do with the change in the usage, where Shenandoah has been growing in their percentage used over the last several years. We've been relatively consistent, so they're still catching up, and also on some of the counting issues that went into calculating that. So I did know it was coming. We didn't know exactly how large it would be. The net impact for us is that we paid no fourth quarter payment, and we'll receive a $22,000 check, which is always good to have, rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
If there are any other questions, Next item, yeah, accounts payable. As is typical, we had 2 check runs during the month, actually 3, but one on May 15th for a total of $14,736.19, and then 2 on June 3rd, total of $233,633.09 and $2241.77, for a total on June 3rd of $235,874.86. I want to note that during May, there was a payable to Offutt Kerman for $2,200 that the board didn't elect to approve, and that was inadvertently carried forward to June and in the original check run. That was removed this morning, and the numbers reflected here, and as shown in the last attachment, bills to be approved report, do not include that. This does include a payable to Walker Jones for, I believe, $2,200, and as such, it would be appropriate for the board to recognize FOIA disclosure before you discuss that payable. $2,361.25. Bill Walker Jones was $2,361.25. That's listed in the payable function order.
Would we read this first?
You should read it before you discuss or take action.
Pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3115H, as a Board of Supervisors member, I, this parish, may have a personal interest related to the approval of the accounts payable process and including consideration of a payment to Walker Jones, which firm provides legal counsel related to the Bragg 1 case. The nature of my potential personal interest is the fact that the named firm is providing for my legal defense as an individual and not a member of the Board of Supervisors. I certify that my involvement in action is as a group of 3 or more members of the Board of Supervisors, which are affected by the transaction, and that I am able to participate in the transaction fairly, objectively, and in public interest.
Pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3115H, as a Board of Supervisors member, I may have a personal interest related to the approval of the accounts payable process that included consideration of payment to Walker Jones, which firm provides legal counsel related to the Bragg 1 case. The nature of my potential personal interest is the fact that the named firm is providing for my legal defense as a member of the Board of Supervisors. I certify that my involvement in action as a group of 3 or more members of the Board of Supervisors, which are affected by the transaction, and that I'm able to participate in the transaction fairly, objectively, and in the public interest.
Pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3115H, as a Board of Supervisor member, I may have a personal interest related to the approval of the accounts payable process that included consideration of the payment to Walker Jones, which firm provides legal counsel related to the Bragg 1 case. The nature of my potential personal interest is the fact that the named firm is providing for my legal defense as an individual and or member of the Board of Supervisors. I certify that my involvement in action is as a group of 3 or more board members, 3 or more members of the Board of Supervisors, which are affected by the transaction, and that I am able to participate in the transaction fairly, objectively, and in the public interest.
Pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3115H, as the Board of Supervisors member, I may have a personal interest related to the approval of the accounts payable process that include consideration of a payment to Walker Jones, which firm provides legal counsel related to the Bragg 1 case. The nature of my potential personal interest is the fact that the named firm may be providing for my legal defense as a member of the Board of Supervisors. I certify that my involvement in action is a group of 3 or more members of the Board of Supervisors which are affected by the transaction, and that I am able to participate in the transaction fairly, objectively, and in the public interest.
Pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3155H, as a Board of Supervisors member, I may have a personal interest related to the approval of the accounts payable process that included consideration of a payment to Walker Jones, which firm provided legal counsel related to the Bragg 1 case. The nature of my potential personal interest is the fact that the named firm is providing for my legal defense as a personal interest, the fact that, on the same line, referring to providing for my legal defense as an individual or a member of the Board of Supervisors. I certify that my involvement in action is as a group of 3 or more members of the Board of Supervisors which are affected by the transaction, and that I am able to participate in the transaction fairly, objectively, and in the public interest.
Thank you. I'll just draw one check to your attention. That is $80,819 check, and that is for the public safety pagers that the board approved in an earlier meeting and purchased. So altogether, this is a rather low month when you take out that 80,000.
I guess perhaps this is a good time of thing to ask, because it's on the agenda later on to be discussed, but the reappointment of Mr. Lucas deputy, I don't remember or recall seeing any billing from him for quite some time.
That's paid as part of the payroll.
Well, that's how it's done. So we don't know what his billable time is.
I'll say that again.
So we don't know what his billable time is, because he's supposed to be
Yeah,
billing by the hour.
Right, we have timesheets for each month and ensure that it's below the allowed. I think it's 8 hours. 8 hours.
I think the board should see what he's working on.
Sure. I'm happy to pull together a report of the billable hours, however the board wants to see it.
I think that would be good, because I don't know why we would think that there was a need if we don't know what he's doing.
I recall having a similar discussion during the budget meeting, and there still wasn't an amount attached to that line item for the deputy county attorney salary. So I do think we need to attach a number there somewhere, what's being done.
Yeah, we've tracked with the reports the some cumulative amount over time, so that'd be easy to pull and send to the board.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Curry, you need a motion you need a separate motion for,
Motion to approve the accounts payable is presented in the $14,736.19 for May 15 and $235,874.86 for June 1st.
I'll make that motion.
And that's second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Carried. Next item.
There are two supplemental appropriation requests, one from the sheriff for reimbursement from the state received for 3 officers who went for training. I think I'm the intoxilizer. That's how you say it. Those are all summarized into one, $732.50, and to go to the Herbert training budget. The form is attached, and the summary form for all supplemental appropriations through the year are attached as well, indicating, yeah, this is actually one of these is not correct. It is 732 even. 244 is not. So the funds are already in the bank. The sheriff is requesting that these sent over to her budget line for training to reimburse this expense.
I move that we take care of this appropriation with a small change in it.
Second.
Motion made
Who's the
and
second down in that end?
John. Motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also.
The next is a similar supplemental appropriations from the Commonwealth Attorney, also a reimbursement from the state for their annual training. Totals $1,913.25 to his dues and membership budget line. The information is attached and is indicated for these two supplemental appropriations, far below the 1% threshold for other people. And these dollars are already in the county's account and just being requested to be allocated back over to the Commonwealth Attorney budget.
I move we adopt these as presented in the packet.
Second.
Motion Motion made and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Next item.
The next item is just an update on the contingency process. There are no additional requests, and the first several will not require a transfer, continue to be confirmed by the latest actual expenditures through the end of May. The woody debris reduction removal, you did transfer at the last meeting, and then the last two from BCA Legal Services and Treasurer's Office computer. The BZI I mentioned earlier that we may have to clean that up in a month. It'll be within probably $100 plus or minus, so we may have to make a small transfer from that. And then it looks like the Treasurer's Office PC replacement will not need transferred. All those computers are now sitting in my little conference room and they arrived. So the board authorized that purchase at the last meeting, so now just be out and get them ready to go and send out and charge each department. So no action necessary for this. But in this $100,000 that we budgeted from your fund balance for the contingency will not be used, and will just fall back to your fund balance and essentially fund the $100,000 for FY20. That's the way we would like this to go each year, not budget for it in our budget, but then use it if we can. The next item on your agenda is purchasing award for accounting services by Mary Kate Earhart and KE. Ms. Earhart's firm has provided accounting services for the county for the last several years. Many larger counties who have CPAs on staff, multiple CPAs on staff, close their books themselves completely and have books ready for our auditors. In our case, we use this firm to help that process at year end. Ms. Nick and I are recommending that that the board authorize me to execute this agreement with NKE as a sole source, given their experience with the county. It would take a lot of work to bring somebody else up on our books. Each year, NKE is having to do less and less as Ms. Nick and her staff are doing a little bit more. So it's a billable rate. Somebody mentioned to me the term in the document that precludes us from hiring one of their staff unless we basically pay them a finding fee. And I understand that's been a problem for this firm in the past, where their accountants go out into the localities and do such a great job that the counties hire them out from under them. So we don't have an intention of doing that, but it is an interesting term. So I'm simply asking the board to provide purchasing approval, as it's over $10,000, probably will be, and then grant me authorization to execute the letter of agreement. I will then post on our website pursuant to 2.24303E, the statement of sole source selection.
I'll make a motion to go ahead and hire this firm. I guess they've been doing it for how many years, do you know?
Probably all of them.
Right, okay. There are no entities, but I'll make the motion to hire them.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion approved.
The next item is the purchasing award authorization to Wiley Wilson for space planning facility condition study. This is a long discussed topic of the building committee and the board. The building committee reviewed a draft scope of work at their last meeting, and from that, changes were made. The scope of work is attached as presented with a schedule. The cost of services is listed, and I'll pull it up. There you go, $49,000. This includes reviewing all of our users and spaces to determine, one, the condition of the buildings, and then make recommendations for further study and design, as well as two, all of our space needs and interviewing the users of the spaces to determine what they believe they need and how we can then ultimately take that data to determine how we can most efficiently use the space that we have. happy to yield the floor to members of the building committee if they have anything else to add. Otherwise, if the board's inclined to move this forward, we of course have a contract and RFP mechanism taken care of, but this again is a purchasing award because it'd be over $10,000.
Mr. Chairman, as a member of the building committee, I can put this in the form of a motion, and then perhaps we discuss it there if the board would prefer.
And as the other member of the committee, I'll second that, Mr. Chairman, for purposes of any questions and discussion.
As Mr. Curry mentioned, we worked on this for quite a while. We discussed it, the pros and cons of reducing the scope, and I believe that what we arrived at, and what Mr. Curry worked out with the firm, is probably the most cost-effective thing we could do. We have a list of buildings and a couple vacant properties, and you know, we were wasting a lot of money on rent, and we have for decades. We need to know where we are and the best way to move forward, and I think this gets us better.
Also too, motion made and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I didn't hear you vote.
Voted aye.
That's fine.
Appointments.
As you've had on your agenda the last several months, there's still a vacancy on your Agricultural and Forestal District Advisory Committee. That committee actually met earlier last month and subject to a public hearing this evening. We have no applicants available, so if anybody knows if anybody who's willing to serve on this committee who literally will meet once a year maybe, please let me know.
May have to double the pay.
I think I remember that rule.
Planning Commission term time.
Yes, the next agenda item is for the Stonewall Hawthorne Planning Commission term, which is expiring on July 7, 2019. So to avoid a gap, you'd have to make an appointment at this meeting or the next meeting. There are two applications, one from Mr. Light, who's currently serving, and one from Ms. Kopjansky.
Is that an Irish spelling? Is this the Irish spelling?
It ends in an I.
So I'd like to say that we're delighted that Melanie's come forward to express interest in this position, especially given the fact that she and I go back so far, along, including her mother and I and her two brothers and her late father. And she's correct, it does put me in a awkward position in that I implored Mr. Light to stay on long enough to finish the comprehensive plan, which is at the cusp of being wrapped up, and a change in the leadership there could further set it back, which is already been set back several times. And no matter how this vote turns out today, that she's got my full support no matter what, and I'm hoping that she retains the interest in serving Rappahannock County, whether it's through this or other public positions. Because, for example, my position is going to be available in the not too distant future. So, at any rate, given all that, I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Gary Light as the Planning Commission representative.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to second for the purposes of having a discussion.
Was there something in particular you wanted to say, John?
I can expand on that. things here in play, I think. I believe it's experience and it's leadership. It was impressed upon me when we went through this evolution for the Hampton district. That experience was very, very important. And to lose institutional knowledge and experience, and also point out the next agenda items, we're losing another member of the planning commission. That's a concern. And I think Mr. Parrish does have the point that Mr. Light has worked on this and brought it to a position where now, hopefully with this consultant that's come on board, we can finally get this thing over the finish line in short order. I also echo his, I'm not going to echo his comments, I'm going to do my own. Greatly appreciate, Melanie, you coming forward and offering yourself to serve on the planning commission. And I guess if you haven't, I don't know, I'm not supposed to ask any questions I don't know the answer to. That's a big mistake. I may have attended some of these planning commission meetings in the past and seen how they've gone. I think that's important, to understand that particular piece of it. There's no doubt with your family history that you've got knowledge and experience, the knowledge and the background, the history of this county. The other point is the leadership point, and I have heard a lot of comments about some leadership concerns with Mr. Light, and I think there are ways to address that. Whether he continues to be the chair or not is at the pleasure of the commission. Can be addressed that way. So those are my thoughts and my reasoning behind seconding his nomination. Is I think we'd be remiss not to take advantage of his experience on this commission and all the hard work he's done. And to lose that body of knowledge, I think, would be detrimental.
If I could, I spent the weekend working on my petition, and I've got a few phone calls, one or two emails. I've got not one contact for support for Mr. Light being reappointed, and I think that speaks volumes. Right now, you don't have to read one version of a newspaper or another. You can just watch the videos of the meetings that have been recorded by the Rappahannock News. And things are not going well at the planning commission. And that it is incumbent upon the leadership, the chair and vice chair of the boards or commissions to lead. It's not happening. So I would think that as critical as it is that we get the planning commission back on track, it may need revamping, may need to appoint somebody new. I've worked with Mr. Light, and there really is no reason for the stalling that we see right now. I don't understand why this board would pay furnish funds and, hire a consultant, and then basically the consultant be rejected by our advisory board. We made the resource available, and basically the chairman has rejected our advice, if you will. I don't know that I've seen that before. That's all I'm going to say.
I just wanted to make a few comments as this board's appointee to a representative on the planning commission. We had a very productive meeting on Friday, thanks to the consulting firm's representative, Tom Gordon, who came to the meeting. I find myself at a bit of a disadvantage discussing the meeting today because it did just happen on Friday, and some of the materials that he presented haven't been widespread yet. But I think that there's a notion that we are close to the finish line with the comprehensive plan. And I don't think that that's quite accurate. Mr. Gordon presented a list of 23 things that he felt needed to be addressed and included in the comprehensive plan in order for us to meet the criteria in the state code, or in the Virginia code, the Code of Virginia, for a comprehensive plan. We had met only half of that criteria. There is still a lot of work to do. As a representative of this body on the Planning Commission, I have asked that commission to entertain all kinds of support, some of which is now being echoed also by UPOR. I've asked them to entertain having a facilitator come in and do meetings for more community buy-in. I've asked them to entertain the idea of having someone come in and do some planning education and zoning education to get more buy-in from the community, get everybody on the same page, to work through the last push on the plan. I asked them to entertain the idea of having a writer come on or a consultant come on to assist them to conclude the comprehensive plan. And they did not choose to undertake that either. The only reason that we now have this direction and this forward motion on the plan is because the consultant came in on Friday and gave us a framework to move forward. Thankfully, there will now be a memorandum generated within 45 days about how to accomplish and to give us some ideas about the rest of the items on the checklist. I like Mr. Light. I think he does a good job. I've said it repeatedly when I offered support to that commission. I know after leaving the comprehensive plan for a dozen or 15 years that redoing the comprehensive plan is a heavy lift. There is lots of help that can be had. We can also appoint additional members to that commission. However, all of the opportunities for assistance have been declined. I think it's important to get the plan done. I think it's critical. I ran promising to get the plan done. I think part of doing anything is doing the thing right. With over half of the criteria for the plan left to do, and then a possible change in leadership as we undertake the ordinances that will logically follow from that plan, I somehow wonder if we aren't better served by making a change at this time rather than in the future. And I know we have a planning commission update later in the agenda, and I'll be happy to answer any other questions regarding the movement on the comprehensive plan at that time.
Thank you. Well, I guess I'll have to make a couple of comments. I remember when I first became supervisor, I used to go to the planning commission meetings because I didn't know very much about planning, but what I do know is that you have to work together as a team. And from what I understand and what I've been listening to recently, that it seems like we get up to a point and then we just stop right there. We're not making any gains. The other thing is when we have differences on the board. Here I'm sitting here looking at 2-2. And I don't know either person that well. I don't know Mr. Light that well, professionally and technically and personally we converse fairly well. Ms. Kojanski, I know the family, like Chris was saying, just as long as anyone else has. But I noticed that from all the experiences I have, it's very, very difficult to change horses in the middle of the stream. We're all supposed to be pulling on the same yoke, but we're not getting anywhere. And to change horses right now, I think would be a mistake. And, just how I feel. The worst part is when you have good candidates. That's the worst part. But, that's all. Anybody else have any more? Sorry. So Chris made the motion, John.
Motion by Mr. Parrish, second by Mr. Lozinski to reappoint Mr. Light.
Okay, and all those for reappointment, say aye.
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 Aye. And all opposed?
Nay.
3-2 to appoint.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The next item on the agenda is regarding the planning commission vacancy due to resignation in the Piedmont district. Ms. Sillo tendered her resignation to Supervisor Smith, and Ms. Smith requested I place an item on the agenda. From a county administration perspective, I need to know how the board would like me to proceed relative to this vacancy.
I guess we just need to advertise to fill the position as soon as possible, which I guess will be the next board meeting.
Yes, and so that's, perhaps at some point in time, either the board or the rules committee, if the board wants to have a policy that says we just advertise all the time for some or all of the boards or commissions, we could skip this step, and I would just note them to do that. I think that's been practiced for most, but not all, so I want to make sure I knew from the board that you want this advertised.
Did we get a consensus, I guess, if that's what the board would like to go through?
Not yet. Oh, no, I don't know.
If we have a consensus, I think we could, Mr. Welch and I could probably work on something.
I'm fine to advertise. I mean, we just had come to all, so I think it's a great idea.
And I can probably get that in this week's paper and next week. Even better when the papers write a story about it. But relative to tasking the Rules Committee, that'd be a different item, and I suppose the Rules Committee could make a recommendation. At your item in the agenda. So I'll just take that as consensus of everyone. Next is a Public Safety Committee citizen representative to that group. This position is recently vacant, and there is one applicant who's come forward, Mr. James Woodard, who's seeking to fill the citizen position. The ad that ran in the paper is on the screen. And in accordance with the rules of procedure, the citizen should be qualified by having experience in law enforcement, fire and rescue, or incident management. Now, I know that those rules and procedures may change in your term with recommendations from the Public Safety Committee, but that's what they say right now. Mr. Wood does have that historical experience pursuant to his application. So if the board wants to make an appointment, you're welcome to, or you can seek additional candidates.
Since we meet quarterly, could you put this off one month?
That would be my preference as well.
Is, we had a, kind of puts me in an awkward position. Mr. Estes attended our last meeting and had input from that position, even though we had asked to vacate that position. But at the same time, Mr. Woodard is a constituent of mine, you know, but I think we should have, maybe make the appointment next month. But Mr. Woodard is qualified. He's extensive volunteer and paid experience.
Sounds like consensus. next are your committee reports, buildings committee.
Building committee. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the building committee is in an awkward position right now. I think we briefly discussed some of the things that we've worked on under new business, but anyway, we've had 2 resignations from our committee, 2 citizen resignations. And there's really not a whole lot of, I mean, even though we have a lot of work to do, most of it will be hinged on the report that comes back from the contract that we just authorized. I'm just wondering if maybe, since we don't really have as great a need for the next couple of months of the committee, that perhaps this board would just delegate meeting with Mr. Curry on an as-needed basis until the new year. We'll have a new board for all practical purposes, but then make a decision on how to go forward with the committee. Right now, it's pretty awkward. We just, there's none of the 3 of us can't really talk to each other.
Now, if you were to do that, I think you would have to take some action to formally suspend the committee for some period of time, forever. Otherwise, it would still exist and we couldn't meet together.
Well, I could put that in the form of a motion then that we, would we have to amend the agenda to do this?
No, I think it would fall into this.
Okay, well, I think that it would be beneficial if the board would consider just suspending the official makeup of the committee until January 1 and let the new board make the appointments.
Just a question, Mr. Curry, when is the Wiley Wilson going to, what is the time, I know they have a timeline in their scope of services.
So August something.
8/20.
Okay, so they're going to come back with something in August.
During that time, when information were to come back, if the committee were in fact suspended, then the 2 of you and I could meet and discuss on it and report back to the board without any problem.
Well, in the meantime, we can solicit any other citizen interest.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to get something back in August or September, then I think we should keep it going.
But right now, we're in a difficult position. We can't talk to each other outside of this meeting because it could constitute a meeting of the majority.
What's wrong with disbanding the committee and then reestablishing it here?
Well, that's what I was suggesting with the motion, but the thing is, like John said, if this thing comes back in August, we have to have some sort of committee to work on it or some sort of unofficial gathering of a couple of us.
I hate to think we're losing traction on this space study, even if it is just September, October, November, December. I mean, that's still a quarter, and a lot can still happen in that length of time. And
Especially as you pointed out, we're spending a lot of money on leases.
I would say that the report will be made available to the entire board. The question is whether a subgroup of the board, this committee, is necessary to take certain actions, pull certain levers in between board meetings. And the subcommittee is not authorized to really take action. It's only recommended to the full board. So you may still be able to do that without a committee by having the information provided to the full board. That's certainly up to the board.
That's a path.
So, again, the board could delegate 1 or 2 of us to a certain function to work with. We certainly operate that way for years. And for you to be able to do anything.
So the motion is to suspend, is that right?
Well, I don't know. We either have to suspend it or do like you suggested, and we advertise to see what type of interest we have out there. But right now, we can't really function.
I would hope that there would be some interest to serve, especially as things are kind of finally hitting a critical point.
We might start to talk about it.
Perhaps the Rappahannock News could run a free ad for us. We could actually, would do something similar. We could actually do both. We could disband the committee and advertise for the committee, and that way you all can continue on in the meantime.
Yeah, I don't know if we disband for the purpose of
Reorganization.
We got a couple months here while Wally Wilson works on it. Let's take a
All
shot
right,
at citizen involvement.
I'll withdraw that motion, and I'll make a motion to advertise for public involvement to citizen members.
We didn't have a motion for the last item. I don't know that I need a motion to advertise.
Okay. Just consensus.
We have done some good work. We've made some
Yeah,
progress
I think
getting to this point.
I mean, there's 12 buildings in that scope of work. That's a big task. It's great to get to that point.
But we either need direction from this board, then I guess the majority wants us to keep it going, so let's get at least a little bit of help. And it may have been a paid issue, maybe we should double the pay of the citizen representatives.
Meetings.
I'm a citizen, does that count for me?
Well, I may have to rephrase that.
Next item is broadband committee.
Now, Mr. Chairman, the Broadband Committee met on May 13th. A couple of key takeaways from our meeting. Todd Summers, big member, introduced us to not personally introduced, but had a meeting with and is recommending that we have a discussion with a consultant by the name of Joanne Hovis during some kind of a work session that would be open to, we would expect that Ms. Hovis, because of her experience in helping other localities, she's apparently made the overture to Mr. Summers to come in pro bono and talk about partnering opportunities and funding sources and goals and timeline. Something that the committee is kind of not necessarily struggling with, but needs to figure out the path going forward. So I'm still waiting to hear back from Mr. Summers as to what her availability may be we're shooting for this month, so that we might be able to set something up for the community to come in as part of the next committee meeting. So that's a work in progress. Second matter is, if any other board members are interested, Mr. Curry and I tentatively have a meeting, we're looking to confirm that as we speak, this Friday with Rappahannock Co-op for a second meeting with them to get an update on their fiber backbone project, so that we can stay up to speed on how they're coming along with their fiber backbone. Maybe hand in glove with that is the third issue, which is, I don't have time for that meeting, that's this Friday morning if any other members of the board would like to. That'll be in Culpeper at the REC offices. Friday, the 7th. And there was an email that came out from VACO on the applications for a new round of state broadband grants. This is VATI, the Virginia Telecom Initiative. There's $19 million in grants available in FY20. It opens June 24th with a deadline by September 3rd. We would need a partner on that. And that's probably something Ms. Hovis would also perhaps address with us, and perhaps something we can talk to REC about as well. Maybe, maybe not. But that's the other thing that's kind of on the horizon here is money for FY20.
Partnership agreement be pulled together in time to compete?
I'm sorry?
Could a partnership agreement be pulled together in time to compete?
Well, the deadline's September 3rd. It's pretty quick, but possible. I don't know, Mr. Perry, you think that's realistic?
The
or
case
is
is, if we can engage a partner who sees value here, they will do a lot of the legwork to get that done. And the way I've seen it happen before is that the partner will commit to a contribution, the state will commit to a contribution, and the county is really the mechanism and vehicle to get it done. And here in the last couple of rounds, localities have actually been kicking in a fair amount of money to sweeten the deal. So that's not something that this board has really come to terms on and made any decisions about. You know, we read about Bedford put $1 million in. So that's what it's taken to win these days.
But we have to kind of get to a decision.
There's a lot more money available now, so that helps too. So it's worth a shot if we can find a partner.
Yeah, it's probably worth addressing too, since Mr. Deacons brought it up in his comments about 5G. There's no discussion at all about 5G in this county. No interest, no conversation.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I just had a question. I missed the name of the organization that Ms. Hovis is with.
I think, is it CTC Net?
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
CTC Net.
Board members and citizens can find a little information included in the last broadband committee agenda on board docs.
Thank you.
That's what I have, Mr. Chairman. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Go ahead.
The Recreational Facilities Authority update.
Well, this board is so active, or the authority is so active that you hardly need an update from me, thanks to Ms. Wells. There is the Rush River Conservation Day this coming Saturday from 9 to 3. It looks like the weather's going to be cooperative, and there's going to be neither too much water nor too little water. So I think everyone's looking forward to a really wonderful day at the river. And then the other thing, if you have not already been out to the park and seen all the work that's been going on out there, there's been a lot of work on the tennis courts in the last few weeks. So I encourage you, if you haven't been over to the park lately, please stop by and admire their handiwork. They've been doing yeoman's work. The trails look great, the river's beautiful, the tennis courts are pristine, the playgrounds are in really good shape, and the pollinator garden was a great enhancement where there used to be one of the kids' play sets. So they've been doing really good work over there. That's all I have.
All right, the next update is from the Public Safety Committee.
We met, it wasn't last week, the week before, and we had advertised the schedule well in advance. There seemed to be several conflicts that evening, so we did not have a large attendance, but I thought it was a very productive meeting. A few things came out of that meeting. One being, Ann Speaker brought our attention to the problems with the cell phones that had been going on apparently for about 2 weeks beforehand. And it was impacting not only the emergency squad's ability to call ahead to hospitals to set expectations for patient arrival, but also folks who have home monitoring equipment that uses cell phone signals to transmit that to their doctor's office. They weren't able to get their reports in, so it was impacting a lot of people. And Ms. May reached out to Sprint and was able to have some changes made that did seem to improve things for quite a few folks. I know some of the monitoring is able to occur again, and she noticed an improvement, but some areas do still seem to be having issues. And I've seen that reported on social media, so I tagged in Crystal and Lauren over the weekend so that they could pursue that a little further.
Lauren was on the phone with them this morning, and I understand cell companies often change their equipment and change the frequency at which they're broadcasting. So higher frequency doesn't travel as far, so they've shifted to some different frequencies, which has affected the coverage.
Right, exactly.
And that's necessary for their upgrades. In some cases, they've done it to a lower frequency, which would provide a greater coverage. However, not all phones, old equipment may not have that frequency capability. So then those folks are seeing a detrimental impact where others may see a benefit. So I think Sprint is trying, Chantel, who is a licensee around here, is trying to fine tune that.
It seems like there have been some definite improvements, but there's still some areas that are feeling the impact. So just a little more work to do on that. There was a situation with a bad tree over in Castleton that was hanging over the road. VDOT has since cleaned that up, and any of the chiefs or volunteers that have problems with trees, particularly if they're damaging the equipment, VDOT's very willing to work with us to get those cleaned up due to the size of the trucks and ambulances that we have up and down the road. And then the other thing that came out of the Public Safety Committee was a result of discussing the citizen representative position. And there was a request that there be more of an effort to get citizen involvement for those meetings. And so we'll coordinate with the office staff about if there's better ways to push out information before those meetings. And also a request to establish an email address that people can send in their safety concerns or complaints to, so that they can then be addressed by the chair of the Public Safety Committee, the Emergency Services Manager, and the citizen representative. So it was a short meeting, but it seemed like it was very fruitful, and that's all I have, Mr. Frazier.
There's one item that I'm aware of. There was going to be a discussion about the road and flood sign, Lower Mills, which I think maybe didn't happen, but I've received commitment that those signs will be placed.
I heard that as well. Seems like that's an evolving situation, and it looks like it'll have a good outcome.
Next is the Planning Commission update.
Well, I sort of gave an update earlier. I apologize for it, but I may have gotten ahead of myself. But I do feel like we're at a point on the Planning Commission where I think there's some fatigue on the commission with it having been undertaken for so long. And I was very grateful to have the input from the consultant on Friday to give us some guidance for the things that we need to do and direction we need to take, and I look forward to receiving that memo in 45 days. We entertained a number of applications last month. We were very busy with that, and there seems to be a sentiment on the commission to pass up the things like Airbnbs to the BCA without a public hearing at the Planning Commission, because really one public hearing should be sufficient for an Airbnb application. And that was something that Holly Mead had done with some from the Golden Retreat property in Flint Hill. So those went up to the BCA. It was a very busy meeting. We had the NPEA discussion, which I guess the other concern besides the comprehensive plan, which I'm happy to entertain any discussion or questions about since I am the representative from this board to that committee, is that I would be very grateful if when we had a discussion that involved legal ramifications such as the NPA discussion or the Cavielli application, if we were able to have the county attorney in attendance as well. Michelle does a wonderful job, and I don't mean this is any reflection on her, but I just know that these are sensitive situations, and it would, I think it would behoove the commission to have the county attorney on hand in case any questions do arise.
I'll be happy to do that, Ms. May.
I would so appreciate that, Mr. Goff.
If Michelle will just give me a heads up on which one she would like me to attend.
So I understand that to be in cases where there are applications for special use permit or special exception, and there's currently a zoning enforcement action moving, that's the time when it would make sense.
I would think that
In many cases, those SUPs or SEs are moving through the process because the zoning enforcement said, you can't do this unless you have this permit, and we strongly recommend that you apply. And then they don't, and then we send a nasty letter. And then they really get the idea, so they apply.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the process. It's just, especially in terms of the MPA questions, because it is such a, I want to say it was a long time ago, 1982, because it is sort of a while back, and that we're referring to having to make a decision that abides by that, and then also, look at the current implications. I think it would be in our best interest to have legal representation for the county there.
As to the work of the planning commission on the comp plan, any action this board need to take, I mean, you had mentioned, and we discussed it once or twice, and this board has never done anything but appointing additional members, or, I mean, that right there, when you've got qualified people, and we only pick one, we might be doing the county as a whole a disservice by not availing ourselves of their capabilities, their assets. So I don't know, but at some point in time, this board has to make that decision whether we're going to appoint more people or send a director to the planning commission. There are, I mean, maybe Mr. Parrish has something that he would like to add to it, but there are things that have went over to the planning commission from this board that are 3 years old that no action has been taken by the planning commission since I was on it. I mean, we worked it up to a point. They're part of that May amendment, which is becoming a joke. I mean, it's not a very funny joke. We've had amendments to our zoning ordinance that seem to have gotten lost.
One of the things I asked Ms. Summers to do, a list on each planning commission agenda now going forward, is a tracking chart of those items that have been referred by the board so that they are front and center at each meeting and we don't lose track of them. So if you look at board docs for the last planning commission meeting, you'll see that list of items that have been forwarded and a couple that have been addressed, but just don't want to lose them. And there was one that we found going back in time that was lost. That was, I think you brought it up, the what's this in mind? Adaptive reuse that was before I was here, along with maintenance, but that we resurrected to make sure made it on that. And this board knows that by state code, if you so choose and pass along by resolution, you can act on these items without planning commission involvement after 120 days if they are unable to or can't act on things. Normally you would reserve that to the greatest extent possible because you want the planning input.
Well, yeah, this board even gave them the opportunity to, after we worked on that, to include that with the others so that we would do a comprehensive update of the zoning ordinance. And for multiple reasons, that never happened.
It seems like the planning commission is so focused on the comprehensive plan right now that these May amendments and whatnot are on the back burner for the time being.
That is correct, and that is my recollection is what we asked them to do, is focus on the comprehensive plan.
But they had been brought to the point to where they were ready for public hearing.
Well, I was going to say, but the May amendments predated our work on the
But
comprehensive
they had
plan.
also been brought to the point where they were supposed to be ready for a public hearing, so there's no reason why that can't go forward. Other than somebody's not wanting to, and I don't understand that.
When I conveyed to the planning commission on behalf of the board the priority of actions, and it was very clear that the comp plan is first. And that's not to say they can't do more than one thing at one time, but time has proven that they probably can't do more than one thing.
You're correct.
So where do we leave with the Berkeley group then? They're gonna have 45 days to come back?
Yes, that's what Mr. Gordon said.
Meeting with them?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they're gonna come in person to the meeting after they generate that memo, or just send their recommendations. I imagine we could request their presence at the meeting to review them. We have been holding work sessions as well. There are 4 items generated by Mr. Light that were then ranked, and the different chapters of the plan were then assigned to some of the different commission members. Chapter 1, which is sort of the introductory chapter, went unclaimed so far. Chapters 2 through 5 were all the data. I volunteered to look through those and make sure that they flow consistently once staff has updated some of the numbers. There are more current USDA numbers that still need to be added, and I requested on Friday that Ms. Summers said she was just overwhelmed and couldn't take that all on herself. And so I requested that she get with RRRC and see what it would take to update those numbers. There is a lot of discussion about affordable housing, and that was one of the things that also came up with the Berkeley Group representative, Mr. Gordon. And there's some desire to do analysis on that as well. So I think although there are parts of the plan that I think are data heavy, and maybe we need to review what we do and don't need within the plan. I mean, times have changed since the last time that the plan was done. There probably are new numbers we should be looking at. So the data is still a challenge, and then the conclusions from the data, putting it together. But I don't know that there's much of a zest from the committee to take on reviewing the data. I think they feel like they reviewed the data with RRRC, and that's sufficient. I don't happen to feel that way, and maybe this board has some other direction for me. After that, of course, we get into more implementation and looking forward and priorities. And those chapters have been divided. Mr. Kohler, I believe, has chapter 6. Ms. Mead has chapter 7. And Mr. Lake has chapter 8. And I think, I find it like trying to have 7 mechanics work on a vehicle at one time. I feel like we're all sort of tinkering and expecting the vehicle to run at the end. And my concern is that it won't.
Isn't that what Berkeley's supposed to be helping us with?
They're supposed to help us kind of all get on the same page. So I am hopeful that the memo that they generate will give us direction, and we will be able to move forward in a more unified way than we have been.
But there's no next meeting with them on the calendar right now?
No, I think the next expectation was the memorandum at 45 days.
And I'm working to schedule a debrief with them
Okay.
by telephone for next week or so.
Very good. And I saw that checklist that he provided, which again, I feel like I apologize that the meeting was just on Friday, so I don't really feel like I can share a lot of what he presented. But he did, present the state code requirements, and then also a checklist of things very succinctly that were accounted for and things that weren't accounted for, and also things that it may benefit us to look at. And I thought that was a really helpful exercise. And some of the things were like our facilities usage, and we can describe what we have so far, and then we can say we're currently in a planning phase and working for a space study, and there are things we can dispatch with rather easily, but I do feel like there is still a lot of work to be done. And although the commission did not ask for the consulting group to join in the exercise, there's palpable gratitude that the board hired a consultant to come in and assist with the exercise. So thank you from them.
The next item is the Rules Committee update.
Again, we didn't meet this past month, but it looks like we have at least 2 items that the board would like the Rules Committee to work on.
process that we adhere to when we have vacancies. And another one would be, I guess, to start working on the necessary framework that would give the consent agenda. Unless the board would like to give us another direction. That might be distributed for another.
I think those sound like great things that would really simplify our meetings and would be much appreciated.
Yeah,
Great.
I think we're getting a lot of things in the process here in the last year with Mr. Curry that we can maybe head for, consent.
Just let me know when you want that meeting to be advertised. And lastly, is this carry-on item regarding proposal to reestablish Board of Finance Committee, which I believe was also referred to the Rules Committee to consider.
There's three things on that agenda.
That brings us to the review of legal matters. I believe this is up to date. Some editing from afar and different people working on this. You can see the updates in the packet. The only thing that I'm not sure about is regarding the Sonic case. It was dismissed with prejudice. I don't know if in fact an appeal was filed.
There was a notice of appeal filed, and nothing's happened since then. I just want to update you on Grigsby and NPEA. There is a motion filed by Mr. Grigsby's attorney, Connick, that's on this Thursday at 10 a.m. That's June the 6th at 10 a.m. It's a motion to intervene in our injunction suit against the trustees of NPEA. So if you're interested at all in that, please show up. It may be mooted by events, but also have an argument against it. So depending on how things go, that motion will be heard that day in circuit court, which is this building.
Ms. Summers is actually on a site inspection today to confirm that that NPA has abated the violation.
If they've abated and they're in compliance, and there's no reason to proceed. So I think there may be a quick hearing.
I don't think any other questions.
I did have a question and perhaps a request. I don't understand, I guess, why Mr. Mitchell would only be corresponding with 3 members of his board instead of the full board and passing along something that's not privileged information, that doesn't pertain to client attorney privilege.
I did speak to him about that, and what I understand is that he's corresponding to his clients, which are the board, and then those individually named. And he views me as the board to disseminate further. So I suppose we could ask him, rather than to rely on me for the quote-unquote board, to just send it.
Was that an express understanding he had with you in advance of that, or that was just his
I think that's
interpretation
his,
afterward?
I think that's his practice of various lawsuits in various localities. But and of course, I do pass it along. But if he's willing to just send it to the 5 of you, then I would like to be copied in some of my files.
Well, this is also for the Sonic case. And Mr. Frazier, aren't you a party to the Sonic case?
We're all board members.
Right. So his explanation was that he's sending to me for the board and then sending to the individuals as well.
It would be my preference, if it's not privileged information, that he communicates with us all equally. I don't know how the other board members feel about that.
Three things that we've been doing for the last couple of years, they only send it to who they feel like sending it to. Really, it's a practice of division that divides the board.
With that, the next item is a Public Safety Committee scope review. This was to be an item on the Public Safety Committee's agenda. I'm not sure with their attendance, and unfortunately I wasn't able to be there.
We didn't really get to it, and unless this body has feedback on it, Mr. Chairman, I'd be inclined to put it off another month.
So be it.
Perhaps after your next quarterly meeting.
Maybe even before that.
Okay. All right, brings us to new business. As the board's aware, at your May meeting, you adopted a budget, and subsequent to that, we will need to appropriate funds as well as adopt your tax levies. I've provided 2 resolutions in your packet, one for appropriating, one for adopting tax levies needed to fund the budget. And as being resolutions, those will need to be considered and voted on as a roll call vote. Happy to answer any questions you may have. I'll just say this, the appropriation resolution is consistent with the adopted budget, as are the tax rates listed in the tax rate resolution. And you can take them in any order you would like.
It's just defining what you said for everyone, we're all on the same page. There's no tax increase reflected in these.
There's no tax increase, that's correct. The same rates has been in the book, 67 cents for real estate, $4.25 for tangible personal property, an additional 6 cents for the fire levy for real estate, an additional 20 cents for tangible personal property for fire levy, and then the $25 per vehicle for the vehicle license tax. The resolution also lays out those areas of personal property that are exempt from taxation, as well as recognizes the tax abatement for members or auxiliary members of the volunteer fire and rescue companies, as provided by section 22-11 of the code, which I believe is up to $599 to avoid the tax implications.
Only one at a time.
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we appropriate the funds for the fiscal year budget beginning July 1, 2019 and in 2020.
Consistent with the resolution provided.
Consistent with the resolutions provided.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and second. Roll call vote. Mr. Frager?
Aye.
Mr. Lorenzetti?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
And I also.
And the second resolution for tax levies upon real estate and for tangible personal property for the calendar year 2019 for Rappahannock County.
Go ahead and make a motion to approve that tax levies for real estate and tangible personal property for calendar year 2019 for Rappahannock County as presented.
A second.
Motion made and second, but once again, this is a roll call vote. Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Lorenzetti?
Aye.
Mr. Frager?
Aye.
And I also.
Moving right along. Next on your agenda is a request from the county attorney to extend the contract of the deputy county attorney. There is a resolution in the packet to that end that is agreed to by the deputy county attorney. With Mr. Goff, add anything to that?
I don't have anything else.
I'll go ahead and make one motion that we extend Mr. Luke for a year. Given the fact that our trial comes up in February, and given the fact that everything else remains the same, that it's only for, I think it's 8 hours a week, at $150 an hour. And also given the fact that it makes him available for extraneous help to the county attorney in the event something comes up that convenes that office, and also considering that there's no other cost to the county, there's no extra office space, there's no extra retirement or insurance or anything like that. So I think it makes sense to continue for one more year. I'll make a motion to do that.
Just to be clear, this would be through June 30, 2020, a year from the date of expiration.
Right, yeah. June.
Would you be willing to amend your motion to accept another line or another partial sentence under subject to appropriation?
I don't think so.
Why
Because the appropriation is, the funds are there, and we're talking about minimum funds.
But we're talking about a new board halfway through this contract.
So have the ability to fire him.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it also, he has the ability to quit at any time, and we have the ability to fire him at any time. So in the event there's a new board that has that motion to fire him, that'll happen immediately.
How would you use the word firing?
Because, why would I use the word?
Well, I use the word fire. I mean, let go, say your services are no longer needed.
Yeah, what I'm saying is the board can terminate the agreement at any time. We can terminate it next month if we want to.
I just think it would be cleaner and easier if we had something like that.
This is the exact same resolution we've been dealing with for the last couple of years.
Except that it's for 1 year instead of for 6 months this time.
Well, I hear you.
And, the court date is set for February,
That's right.
so why don't we make it for 9 months?
I think this is just as clean to do it for a year, and when we don't need them anymore, we terminate them, because we're allowed to do that at any month.
Yeah, I mean, if we settle the case in November, we can just say,
Yeah, adios.
adios.
Just to be clear, that is covered in item number 7. His employment may be terminated by the county effective immediately if noticed by any means to him by the county attorney, the county administrator, or from the board of supervisors.
I'm going to second Mr. Parrish's motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and second. This is the roll call.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Frazier.
Nay.
Mr. Lozinski.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Nay.
Mr. Perry.
Aye.
And I also.
Next is the first addendum item regarding a letter of congratulations to the Wayland Blue Ridge Baptist Association. Included in the packet as of this morning is their letter to the county, which we'll place on the screen. Basically letting the board know that they are announcing that they're in their 130th year of their annual session, which will be held in July, and they requested and said they would be honored if the board would send a congratulatory letter to them recognizing that and the work they've done. From that letter and the website, I pulled together a very short letter, which is also up on the screen. Congratulations on embarking on your 130th annual session in support of regional Baptist churches, including those located in Rappahannock County. Your work to provide for the union of churches in our region is commendable, particularly recognizing the length of time your services have been offered. Your support of community causes, including organizations to assist assist the homeless, educational institutions, religious organizations, emergency relief such as for Hurricane Katrina, Homes for Haiti, and other local worldwide needs through your outreach and availability of the Baptist Center have been a needed support to Rappahannock County citizens. The last bit of information taken from the website. The board is reminded to have this letter sent. I would recommend you authorize the chairman to sign or modify.
You need a motion.
I think it would be best.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
It has to be unanimous, I assume that was unanimous.
It was.
Yes.
The second addendum item that you added at the beginning of the meeting is to consider conveying the plow purchased from Department of General Services some time ago. It was put into service back in March of 2018 to Castleton Volunteer Fire and Rescue. As you recall, in March of 2018, the board took an action to allow Castleton to use the plow on their truck. And then it didn't really snow, so they didn't do it. But they've got their truck all fitted to use the plow. And now that we've held it and put it in use for 12 months, we're able to convey it to Castleton and meet all the Department of General Services requirements. I look back on the minutes from March, and your action was just to allow them to use it, not to gift it to them. So if the board is in mind to gift it to them, which I think was the original intention, I would appreciate a motion to that end now, and I will make that happen.
I'll make that motion. I know that they did spend some money to fit the truck, to fit the plow. So they already have a vested interest in that operation. So I make a motion that we just give them the plow.
I can second that if we put the requirement on there that it be treated as public property for procurement purposes, so that if they do away with it, it would have to follow the public procurement process.
It's fine.
It's got our name on it, right?
When we made it available for use, one of my conditions was that they stencil those county of Rappahannock on the back, in case DGS came looking for the plow that we own, we could go point to it and say, there it is. So one of the reasons they're anxious to get this done is because they want to paint it. The truck is all nicely redone, and they would like to get this painted in the off-season, which I would allow them to do until this happens.
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay.
And then it's unanimous, which is required for the bill.
Okay, your activities.
My activities. First, I want to thank the board and staff members for the condolences that I received, as well as everybody stepping in since I've been out of town for the last 2 weeks. I very much appreciate that. Already mentioned the regional jail true-up earlier in the meeting, so I won't go over that again. There's been a lot of long-term talk on having the leachate pond analyzed and flow analyzed. I've started that work with Labella, which was Joyce. They submitted a letter to DEQ with their plan to monitor the leachate flow with an instrument, and so that's moving forward. As soon as we get that data, which will be tracked for a month or at least through a couple heavy rains, then we'll be able to work up the plans for the size of the tank necessary and submit those to DEQ, which may take months for them to approve. I'm hopeful we'll get to the end of that and stop paying for all the rainwater. This variable tower building permit is final, so that tower is done, which means our rent will start. And the construction drawings that the Harris have pulled together, those just have a couple minor comments left between Harris and the tower manufacturer, so they should start their work very soon. Similarly, the Amosville Tower, the construction drawings for that, just showing the antenna and the ground equipment, is preliminary and submitted to SBA, the tower owner for that. working through the lease document with them. The other facet of that is at your July meeting, assuming I can get all the paperwork together, which I need to do, you will likely have a public hearing to allow yourself to add an antenna to that tower. Our code has some special provisions for local government. If it's a local government asset, it doesn't go to the planning commission first, it goes straight to the board. So you'll see that at your next meeting. Regarding telephone complaints, we had just one CenturyLink complaint for static on the line, and one Verizon complaint about a dial-out issue that I think Mr. Frazier is aware of. I believe those issues have been resolved. So that's still very good news on that end. And then I mentioned earlier the NPEA enforcement action. It appears, we've been told that the violation has been abated, and Ms. Summers is going to make a site visit today to confirm that. That would be very fortunate and allow us to, Mr. Goff, to do whatever legal terms, fall across or whatever.
Just dismiss precious, right?
So we like when we don't have to go to court and bother judges, just get things resolved. And then I believe they are working, or will be working on application to allow intermittent use in the area that is permitted by the consent decree. Happy to try to answer any other questions for you. That brings you to your information and correspondence, just a letter from Comcast letting you know of a channel change. Something I've never heard of before, is changing out their system.
It just seems like they're using that for free advertising.
Maybe, I think the FCC requires them to send this notification. I don't have to include it in here.
Sounds like a good item for the consent agenda.
Exactly. Then you have your monthly building permit report. I did notice it's, I believe, $1.9 million, $1.9 million of construction amount. Of course, those are estimates, but that's a good investment. You know, those eventually will transfer into tax revenue. Then you have your monthly zoning report, and the VDOT report, followed by a recess.
I have a couple of questions on the VDOT report.
Yep.
Mr. Curry, I see we have an update here on their traffic engineering studies on the through truck restriction for 729 Benvenue. Are you getting any verbal updates on that? Are you getting any updates beyond what VDOT's given us here?
I have not heard anything. The signs are down on Benvenue that VDOT put up temporary signs to alert people that it was, this section was subject to a potential through truck restriction, and to send in their comments, which you heard at your last meeting, a number of citizens were aware and were sending that information in. I've not heard anything from VDOT since. I can inquire.
Okay.
So this is, the request is under review by the Central Office Traffic Engineering Division.
And then you had circulated a letter, I guess. They're going to do some traffic count studies in the county?
Right. And this is most pertinent to us as we're working on the annual secondary 6-year plan. And you remember there's a threshold of 50 vehicles for those gravel roads. That's how it impacts us the most. Other localities, it's a bigger deal on the primary routes because they may have significant improvements needed for the primary routes, but our capacity is rather good on the primary routes. So you will see those traffic counting loops throughout the county in the coming months, and I was just forwarding that along so people know why they're there and what they're for. So hopefully on those gravel roads that we want hard surface, they'll be over 50, and the ones we want that we don't want surface will be under 50. Avoid all the companies.
And then speaking of which, they've still got Battle Run Road here under the rural rustic projects, but since it's TBD, I just assume that's their...
I signed the resolution as well as the revised 6-year plan, and it is not on those documents.
This just needs to catch up to that.
Yep.
Thank you.
I have a question about the zoning administrator's report,
Yeah.
and you all, I may need to ask Michelle, but I keep seeing advertising advertisements for a wine festival, and I was just wondering, I haven't seen any permitting for that. Are you familiar with what's going on with that?
As of a couple weeks ago, there is a draft violation letter. I'm not sure where it's been released yet. I know,
Not yet.
yeah, sent to Art for review. It's hard to, you can't issue a violation letter for something that hasn't happened. So we can issue advisory notices saying you might want to understand the rules. And so I think we're working through some of the finer points of that.
Thank you.
There are no other questions that bring us to recess.
Well, I just wanted to say too, I know that those are kind of new processes since we don't have a lot of festivals. And I think Sperry Fest was probably the first one we had in a while that had to go through.
Yeah, and so it's a distinction in our zoning ordinance as to whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit.
Oh, okay.
And a nonprofit is a permitting exercise that the zoning administrator can grant. For-profit has to go through.
Special session normally, right?
Yes, but you can have, there's an exception once every 3 years where it can be administratively approved.
Oh, okay.
And there's some question of whether when it's happened in the last 3 years for that particular.
I thought there was one last year in conjunction with the Inn's anniversary celebration.
Yeah, without permits, and so did it happen, did it not happen, who has the records, what can you prove
If
in
the tree
court?
falls in the forest, you'll hear it.
Well, you have to, ultimately, the board and the county would have to convince the judge that, that it happened with sufficient evidence if we're going to issue a violation notice if it happens again. So, it gets complicated, which is why we don't just send a letter.
Very good. I just want to make sure that we're dealing with that event permit even-handedly.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, let's recess until 7 p.m. And that tree won't make any noise unless the power's off. First item is a resolution presented to the Huff family.
Mr. Chairman.
They're only half here, so we're gonna.
Yeah, if I might, we could slip that down after the public hearing and give some time for Robbie. He's on his way.
Everybody agree?
Is that a motion from Mr. Lozinski?
Yeah, motion to move presentation Q1 after R2, I guess. That's alphabetically coded.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
I wonder, I'm happy to second it. I do wonder if there's any interest in going back to, now that everybody's had a little time to think about it, revisit our earlier discussion to see if there's anything this body wants to do to support the planning commission and the comprehensive plan. So I would be requesting further discussion of the comprehensive plan update. And that would be after the public hearings and after the resolution presentation, but before the public comment.
Before the public comment?
Yes, sir. It could be after.
You want to take one at a time?
Well, let's take care of Mr. Lozinski first.
Okay, well then I just
We have a
second.
motion, we need a second.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sounds like 5 to 0.
Now, next.
I wondered if anyone had any further thoughts about ways to support the planning commission in review of the comprehensive plan in light of our discussion at the earlier session. And if perhaps we could review all of the solutions at our disposal to do that, and if I could get a better sense from the board members, if you all would like to take the lead to provide any of those supports without the planning commission requesting them. So it's a further discussion of the planning commission update.
I think it would be better to put it off till next month so we can advertise it to have more people here. Comment.
So, we're talking about the board taking some initiative here, where we get public comment and an advertisement for them.
Well, obviously there's people in the audience that might be of assistance. We don't have to do this, I'm just saying it's possible.
I guess I'm all for initiative, but I guess I want to know exactly what we're, I'd like to see something in advance, maybe be able to prepare for it.
Well, I'll just say that you can have discussion, any action would have to be unanimous, given it's an addendum item, so
Correct.
that gives comfort to any board members to add an item.
Yeah, I don't think discussion's gonna hurt us at all. That'll give us maybe a path forward for next month. I would second that.
Is that a motion?
Yes, that was a motion to continue the discussion we started, I just saw it. No, it was the review of the comprehensive.
It was under committee reports.
Okay, there we go. The planning commission update, continue I-5. And it could be after public comment, so that we're not delaying the public any further, if that would be the board's preference.
No problem here.
So just to be clear, your motion is to add an item, continue planning commission comment after S1, which is public comment.
Yes, that's kosher.
Motion's always in order.
Okay, motion made and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
I vote aye.
5-0.
No, I'm opposed.
Is that 4-1?
Well, I do want to change my vote to make him feel better.
Pardon?
I'm just kidding.
I thought I heard you right the first time.
Actually, I don't think that.
Okay, that brings us to our public hearing.
Number 1 is renewal of the agricultural and forestry districts.
Yes, we have two agricultural and forestal districts, Jenkins Mountain and Massey Exton. Ms. Summers is here to provide a brief introduction, after which we will hold a public hearing, and then the board can pass ordinances for each to extend them for another 10 years if you so choose.
The Jenkins Mountain and Massey Exton districts were created back in 1981. They are provided for through State Code Section 15.2, 4300, and 4400. These districts are completely voluntary, and the property owners wishing to be included in these districts are essentially stating they will not develop the property. The Jenkins districts is approximately a total of 1,683 acres. The Massey Exton district is a total of approximately 745 acres. The Agri-Forestal District Committee reviewed these on May 15th, and they recommended approval. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on these districts on May 15th and recommended approval for another 10-year term. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I just wonder if there's any additional acreage being added, or removed.
They've actually decreased in size.
They have decreased.
So Ms. Summers, if you could explain your outreach efforts to the property owners.
What I do is I take a list of the property owners that have been in the district, send them a notice, and provide them an application. If they want to remain in the district, they have to submit that application back to my office. If they choose not to, then they simply don't need to do anything.
No other questions would be appropriate to open the public hearing. One at a time, first for Jenkins Mountain.
Mr. Curry, you want to state for the minutes, the advertising and so forth?
Yes, both public hearings were properly advertised in the paper. Actually, 3 successive weeks to cover the planning commission and this meeting.
Okay, anyone wishing to care to speak? please raise your hand and when recognized, stand and tell us your name, the district that you're in, and I will now open, and direct your comments to the board. I now open the hearing. Anyone wishing to speak?
I have a question. Are we speaking just about this topic, or is this a general comment?
Okay, this will be only for the Jenkins Mountain Agricultural and Forestal District, then there'll be another public hearing for Massey Exton, and then there'll be yet another public hearing for Glen Gordon Manor, and then there'll be a general public comment.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anyone care to speak? Anyone care to speak? Declare the public hearing closed. Stephen Mason.
So if the board is inclined to approve the Jenkins Mountain Agricultural and Forestal District ordinance, a copy is provided in board docs and I have here in front of me. And so a motion to approve the ordinance as presented would get that done.
This is the roll call.
Yes.
I'll make a motion since they want to have this agricultural district to let them have it, and we approve it as presented.
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
Motion made and second. This is a roll call vote. Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
Mr. Lozinski?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Parrish?
Aye.
And I also.
Now, sir, we would open a public hearing for the Massey Exton Agricultural Forestal District ordinance.
Public hearing is open. Any comments? Any comments? Public hearing is closed.
So just as you
That's the
completed.
Exton.
Yeah. So there's an ordinance in your packet that can be used to extend this district for another 10 years. And just needs to be moved and seconded and voted.
Likewise, I'll make a motion when we approve the Massey Exton agricultural district as presented.
I'll second that as well, Mr. Chair.
Motion made and second. This is also a roll call vote. Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
Mr. Lozinski?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Parrish?
Aye.
And I also. 2 down, 1 to go. Glen Gordon.
All right. The next item on your agenda is a special exception 1902-01 for Glen Gordon Manor, requesting an expansion of their current permitted use. Ms. Summers will provide an introduction.
Thank you. They have indeed asked for expansion of the current special exception. They wish to modify to increase the maximum number of rooms from 9 to 14 and the number of events of up to 100 people from 6 to 12. The property is owned agricultural and it's 45 acres in size. There is no new construction being proposed at this time. VDOT has commented that if the average number of vehicles stay the same, then they have no objections as their entrance already meets a low commercial standard. The health department indicated that upgrades will need to be performed. The applicants are very aware of this, but of course, we'll proceed with that after approval. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on April 17th, and they recommended approval. This application has been advertised for public hearing, and no adjoining property owners have been notified by mail. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'm wondering about a discrepancy, Michelle, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Did you say 14 rooms or 15 rooms? Because
14.
The letter in the packet dated February 22nd says 15 rooms.
That is correct. Through the health department, they would be limited, I believe it's through the health department, am I correct? It would be 14 rooms, so that's what they kept it.
Okay, very good.
And the applicants are present tonight.
Was there much opposition from neighbors?
No, sir.
I guess that means there was none.
There was none.
I don't recall that.
No.
And several people spoke in favor of it.
Correct.
Before opening the public hearing, you may wish to recognize the applicant, if they want to say anything.
Any comments?
Unless you have questions.
Pardon?
Unless you have any questions.
No.
So that, open the public hearing.
Anything else? Okay. Go ahead, the public hearing open. Same rules as all the others. Anyone caring to speak? Anyone care to speak? Declare the public hearing closed.
Mr. Curry, this was properly advertised. wasn't it?
Yes, it was. With this application, there are a set of draft conditions that were discussed and provided for at the Planning Commission, which I believe the applicant supports, that's shown on the board and the side and in back. These are, so with this special exception, if you're inclined to approve it, you would approve it with conditions, and these are the recommended conditions from the Planning Commission. It looks like the Planning Commission unanimously supported the application for recommendation, with Ms. Mead absent. This doesn't require a resolution, but a motion, and it'd probably be good for a roll call vote, to be clear.
But with no opposition, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve.
Wait. Why don't we discuss this thing?
Oh, that's fine, go ahead.
Well, I have a couple of questions, and you're already putting forth a motion.
Well, then there's a second.
Normally, the chair, I think the chair should ask if we have any questions.
Any questions?
Yes, sir. What is the current predominant agricultural use of the property?
It's a horse farm.
The horse farm. And that's agricultural production, or are you just zoned agriculture? I guess what I'm asking, are you in land use right now?
We're not in land use,
You're
no.
not.
No, it's in scenic easement.
Scenic use.
Oh, it's conservation easement.
Yeah.
How many acres is it?
45.6.
I wonder how that wound up in conservation easement.
Before our administration. This
So-
was re-
It
I
was
think it
already-
happened other than, we bought it in the easement.
Normally, a conservation easement gives up development rights and you may or may not even have had a development right. That's all I have right now.
Is it okay if I make a motion?
I guess I was trying to determine
Yeah.
what the use of the property was, if it's an agriculture producing property. And we've had these come before us before, it's gonna be difficult to have that number of events and still be in agriculture.
Right.
But if it's in conservation easement, it's granted agricultural status and perpetuity unless this board does away with land use.
Well, yes. Matter of fact, if we do away with land use, they still have the luxury of land use taxation.
And no, it's only as long as you have land use.
Not true. Anyway, that's beside the point. So I'll make a motion that we approve this, seeing as it came to us with unanimous approval from the Planning Commission.
Is that with the conditions?
With these conditions, right?
What are the conditions?
They're on the screen, the standards of 170-65E, limit of 14 rooms, events for up to 30 persons twice monthly, events for up to 100 persons 12 times annually with portable facilities to be provided for those events, and outdoor events to conclude by 11 p.m. How many bedrooms do they have approval for right now? Or how many guests?
Nine.
The main difference that I remember in this application from the previous application is it is increasing the number of sleeping rooms. by 5. And it's, the previous accession had given them 6 events a year with 100 people, and this doubles that number to 12.
How many of the larger events did you have, say, in 2018? By larger, I mean these ones.
3.
3? And I guess you're thinking you're going to be having more of those, you're looking for an increase from 6 to 12?
Perhaps.
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 Are those are primarily weddings, I guess?
Yeah, weddings, we've done weddings and hunt balls.
We have a motion,
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
we have a second. Do we need a roll call vote this time also?
I think it would be helpful for people to understand the vote.
This will be a roll call vote. Mr. Frazier. Mr. Lizinski.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Parrish.
Aye.
Mr. Frazier.
President.
And I vote aye also.
Well, it passes 4-0 to 1.
You go back to public comment, I
Yeah. This is where you moved Q1 to, so if it's the pleasure of the board, you can push Q1 to after public comment or move the planning commission item to now. Or we can take a recess.
I don't think we got any traction with the planning commission, I don't
Oh,
think.
that's right.
It was unanimous.
No, that's
We're going to
the action.
Yeah, it's added, it just can't.
Four of us to go on.
Well, then,
Might I recommend we go on a public comment and
Yeah.
come back to the presentation?
Wow.
Still waiting on one individual for the presentation.
Okay, we'll do the public comment.
I might be,
Do I need to put that in form of a
I would
motion?
prefer that.
All right, I move that we move Q1 to after public comment.
second.
Motion made and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also. And get that straight now, we're in public comment.
Yes, sir.
Public comment is almost the same as a public hearing, except it's any topic you want to speak on. So I'm going to go ahead and open the public comment. Anybody wishing to speak, raise your hand. Yes.
Good evening, Sheila Gressinger, part of the Hampton District. I wasn't going to say anything this evening, and then there was a comment about having a further discussion about the Planning Commission. I think it would be in the best interest of everyone if the Planning Commission might be asked if they need any more help. They're right in the position now of having a consultant who is going to be giving a report in 45 days. And I think within that 45 days, that person and his firm will give a report, and then the Planning Commission will be able to decide what to do with that. My understanding and perception of how the comprehensive plan is going forward is that even with the consultant and with the things that he listed to comply legally, it wasn't that much of an overwhelming task that it couldn't be done with some dispatch. And so I think the board would be wise to wait until that specific a bunch of events had occurred before they go forward. Because in my opinion, it'd be like ramming down your throat or something, and I think that's appropriate.
Anyone else? Yes.
For Marquezet from the Piedmont District. I'm not
Say your
sure.
name again?
Forrest Marquezet from the Piedmont District. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time or not. Just wanted to speak in reference to the proposed cell tower outside of Woodville. Just want to say generally that, in my opinion, I don't think we should have any cell phone towers in Rappahannock, for the reason that they're unsightly additions to the landscape, and also for the known and unknown dangers that they pose to the environment, animals, and humans as well. I understand that there are benefits to having cell phone towers and increased communications, especially for our first responders. But I think that's a double-edged sword, as the more cell phone towers, there might be more distracted driving and more accidents due to having more cell phone towers. Specifically, the location in Woodville, I witnessed the balloon test, and it seems there could be a better spot that's less visible from the road in that instance. As I drove by, I could see it both coming to Woodville and leaving Woodville towards Sperry.
Forrest, is this the one on Elden Farms you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Did you witness the first flight that was in the tree line closer to 522? Or was this the second flight that was a little bit further back off the road that you saw? Or
Well,
both?
I don't know. I showed up around 10:30, I think.
Was
So
it-
May 17th?
Recently.
Okay, so it was
2
probably the
weeks
one that's a
ago.
little bit further back off the property. They've done two now on Eldon Farm, and we have received, I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, but we have received no proposals or any sort of information about any sort of intention to go forward with either of those locations. So I don't really have any information on them at this time, other than what you saw.
Okay, I wasn't sure and just figured this would be a good time to bring it up, and I appreciate the update.
It is a good time.
It is a good time.
The problem is we don't have much to answer with.
Okay,
That's our dilemma.
I guess my question then would be what, coming up as far as being a citizen who wants to be aware, were we just waiting now for someone to make a proposal or something? And this is it.
Right, there would be an application presented to the zoning administrator. And I'm sure if you gave your contact information to Michelle, she could update you when she receives proposals, and when it's on the agendas for meetings.
Okay.
We have lists of people that we send out agenda updates to, so that they will be in the loop when items that they're concerned about are on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Anyone else care to speak? Yes,
A comment on the same thing.
I can't hear you.
I have a comment on the same thing. as
Sure.
that. I'm Jonathan Marquezet, also from the Piedmont District. And my comment was that I also went and looked at the balloon test, I guess, the one on May 17th, the most recent one. And it's a very common thing. It's one of the first things you see when you kind of come out of Woodville and you see Elgin and the mountains and a tower right there. And I think that if I'm generally opposed to cell phone towers in the county as well, but if we are to have them, I think they should be not located so they're that prominently visible. Where it's 6 out of the 7, I think they're more hidden, I think, and that's not gonna.
Nice.
Could you help me with your last name?
This one I was? Yeah.
MARQUISEE.
Good.
Very good. Thank you.
She's the rep.
So for that,
Wow,
She's the rep.
I can't even pronounce it. Anyone else care to comment? Yeah.
Nancy Moon Wakefield. I would just like to say, I believe we have a cell phone tower right beside our property on Dale Welch's farm. And it is a silo. And I really have it's very visible, and I don't have any objections to it whatsoever driving up or down 522.
Okay.
Yes.
This is very interesting because what a lot of them are talking about is the visual appearance of the cell towers. Now, a lot of places we can't put the silos because they're so big and everything. But when I was traveling, used to travel up to Maine, there would be the one that looks like a tree. And it seriously is, it looks like a big tree, so you're shaking your head no.
The ones I've seen were hideous.
If I could find it, I'll bring a picture of it because it looked like a tree amongst all other trees that looked just like it. It just looked like a tall tree, so it didn't look stupid.
We had a tree in Rappahannock, I just forget the height of it.
Anyway, that might be something. If I could find a picture sometime, I'd bring it in. That might solve a lot of things because it wouldn't be really messing with the view shed.
Maybe you could pick that tree out, if you want to call
I
it
think
tree.
there's one on 522 south.
See how different
On Flint Hill, but nobody knows it's there because you can't see it.
Do you remember the height of it?
Pardon?
Do you remember the height? It's been so long, I forgot the height
No,
of it.
it's under 200.
It's not a tree with a light.
Anyone else wish to comment? We're kind of getting off the track here. Anyone else wish to comment? Declare public comment closed. You've got-
Well, I have a public comment, if I could make one, or a question rather.
You can make one now, Mr. Frazier.
I just wonder why there's such reticence by certain members of this board to actually discuss or do something about the planning commission, and certain members of that board have a reluctance to work diligently on the comp plan.
This sounds like it's part of the agenda item. that is upcoming.
No, it's not, it's just a public question, it doesn't even have to be answered, but the thing is, we have a member of the planning commission that serves on this board, and they have asked for help, and seems to be falling on deaf ears. I just thought I'd put that out there.
I don't know if that is, because we weren't prepared to be insisting on that tonight. I guess if we didn't know, we studied up. What are we gonna do later?
I don't know why a member of the board of supervisors isn't ready to discuss something as important as the comp plan.
You're talking about me, I'm ready. Now, I thought we were gonna do it now.
The motion was to,
I can say I was gonna be silent. I'm ready to discuss it.
the motion was to place that, the continuation of the planning commission update during the comp plan after public comment, which to me is before or after the comp item, so I think it's appropriate to take that now if the board wants to move on to it.
Well, I know that it was a lot of information at the earlier meeting. We covered a lot of territory on Friday in the work session. And I have, as I said earlier, brought what I thought were all of the reasonable alternatives short of paid staff that we could reasonably enlist to assist the planning commission in completing the comprehensive plan. And just to be clear, as I've told that body, I want to make sure the board understands that when I feel that the planning commission needs assistance to finish the comprehensive plan, it is not because they are not doing their jobs or because there is a problem. It is because it has gone undone for so long that it is a big job. And it is reasonable to expect that they would need some assistance to do it. We're supposed to review it every 5 years. It's been more like 15. So it is a big lift, and I am very aware of that. And so when I asked that the planning commission possibly receive some assistance, it is not a negative reflection on them, and I certainly don't mean to bring any sort of offer of assistance down their throat, as some people would say. However, it is just a recognition of the large task at hand and how very important it is to accomplish and how, frankly, we need to lead, follow, or get out of the way, because this needs to get done. And I'd like to lead. They didn't ask for the paid consultant, but the paid consultant made a lot of headway on Friday, and the members of the commission were so glad to have that insight. So I just wonder if there's not other things we could provide them that I'd like to get feeling back from this board about whether we have any interest in providing them, because the paid consultant was certainly something easy enough to do.
But we could certainly have a joint work session.
That was going to be my suggestion in light of Sheila's comments. And I guess if we're going to have a joint work session, I would just wonder what the best timing for that would be. Would we want to do it before we get the memorandum back from the Berkeley group? Or would we want to maybe schedule a joint review of the memorandum with the Planning Commission and work our way forward?
Seems, my opinion is wait for the Berkeley memo. I think that'll help shape the conversation more. We may end up going off on a tangent or a path. That's it doesn't sync with where the Berkeley group is saying we need to focus. And so, since that first meeting has already happened, and it sounds like it was pretty productive, and you're waiting for this memo to come out, sounds like we might want to keep our powder dry until that comes out, and then maybe consider it open. That would be my take. I don't know how the board members feel about that.
I think it's good. It'll also give us an opportunity to just, determine between now and then what type of support we could offer.
So my turn.
Is that a consensus?
So our joint work session would probably be a good idea. Let me start with this. Rappahannock County is what it is because of the existing comprehensive plan that we have in place. And we're required to review that plan. We're not required to change it necessarily. When I can see where some outside help may be beneficial, but I'm a little skeptical sometimes because, for example, this Mr. Gordon, I guess was his name when he came over. I think he said that was the first day he ever set foot in Rappahannock County. We had somebody here earlier today that just rode across the country on a motorcycle, and he said there is no other county like Rappahannock County. It's unique. And what's made it unique is the comprehensive plan that we've adhered to all these years. Now, this is not the first time that we have brought in outside counseling, consultants. Not too long ago, we hired an outfit out of Connecticut for $30,000 to look into our fire and rescue squads and how to keep the volunteerism going in those arenas. And after a number of months, and after we gave them $30,000, their only recommendation was to change our zoning and allow more development so that young people would move in that would volunteer for these jobs with the volunteer positions in the fire departments and the rescue squad, which I didn't think was particularly good advice because then we got more houses, and I think residential development is about the most costly development that we could look at, and would also do away with our unique nature that we enjoy here and quiet on that. So we use comprehensive plan to create ordinances that are enforceable. Although, technically, people don't believe me when I say this, but there's literally not a single law in the state of Virginia that requires us to actually follow our comprehensive plan. But we do follow it, we do use it. And so it's a good thing to have. This is, like Ms. Smith pointed out, it's been going on for, I don't know, how many years? I mean, Ron, you were on the board for 10 of those years, I think. And it's still hanging there. When I was on the Planning Commission last year, it seemed to me like what needed to be tweaked was basically the demographics have changed a little bit, but it really hadn't changed that much. The population is literally about the same as it was when we started reviewing the plan 10 or 15 years ago. So at any rate, what I would love to see is for us to go on with it, because if we go ahead and follow our obligation of reviewing it like we're doing and sign off on it, we don't have to wait 5 years to review it again. We can start next year if there's some misgivings about it. But it is distracting the county. We're so focused on this that we're not, looking at the May amendments. We're not looking at, B&Bs and minimum lot size and other zoning issues and murals, et cetera, et cetera. We're kind of hung up on this. So I don't want to appear to be diminishing the importance of the comprehensive plan. It's very important. We have a great plan. And so I think that and I know that consultants, when they get a foothold, their next job, not from us, but from their company, is to create more work for them to charge, so they can charge us more money. And I'm just fearful of that. So that's basically how I feel about the whole thing.
I just want to point out that the irony of this is that I'm the only member of this body that didn't vote to hire the consultant. I'm the only one that voted against hiring a consultant.
Good for you.
The other 4 of you voted to hire the consultant. So now there's a problem with the consultant that you just voted in the last meeting to hire?
I don't remember. So
I think she's correct.
What's that?
I believe she's correct on that.
Is that right?
Yes, sir. That's
Yeah,
correct. It was a 4-1 vote.
I would like to kind of dovetail something with what Mr. Harris said, though. The county really, by and large, it's not the comprehensive plan so much that has protected us as a variety of things, and the comp plan probably included, but simple economics and the fact that we have a 4-lane highway that just about dead ends and dies on this side of the mountain. It's not the same as being along the 29 corridor. So there's a lot of things that kind of dovetail in with that. But how often have we just approved a special exception and not one of us mentioned that how it fit in the comprehensive plan? Not one of us did that. And if you watch and sit at the planning commission level, watch the meetings, participate in them, it doesn't matter. Very, very seldom is the comp plan ever mentioned there.
Because there's a one-off removal from the comp plan because we're dealing with the ordinances that were created to help with the comp plan.
I understand that, but the comp plan plainly states in more than one place that we should be protecting the agricultural conservation, our zoning ordinance calls it resource preservation zones, and yet we don't do that. We're constantly doing something to change the balance and cause an imbalance in the way that we take property out of agricultural production and use it for commercial use. And we don't justify that by using the comp plan. Most of the time, we have somebody on the planning commission that says, I feel that this is a good thing. I feel that this is a good use of the property. And I took enough of those zoning classes to know that the first time we speak up in a court case and tell the judge that we felt it was the right thing, we're on the way to losing that case. Because you can't feel anything. A zoning ordinance is black and white. You don't have feelings in zoning cases, and yet, more than once, I've sat out there and watched the current planning commission members, some, members that are still current, talk about somebody's child's participation in sports in the county. That has nothing to do with land use. That's how far afield we have got from using our common.
If I may, Mr. Frazier, it's kind of interesting, somebody pointed out today the building permit report. As I've learned, it's been pointed out, our number one source of tax revenue are $1 million homes, the larger homes being built out here. In year-to-date totals, at this time in 2018, there were 8 new homes constructed and 7 with commercial uses. As of this time this year, we have 10 new home constructions and 9 commercial uses. And we've got permits issued from between April 22nd and May 21st in the construction amount of just shy of $2 million for that period. 3 dwellings, 6 renovations, and 2 accessory buildings. And then another $220,000 in miscellaneous permits. So I think that's including $50,000 in roof-mounted solar arrays. So, you're seeing a lot of this type of growth. Goes right to the tax base, I guess, unless anybody wants to beg to differ. That's the way I've been told.
But at the same time, again, we're not really following our comprehensive plan. Our zoning administrators have been here that long, but we don't have any record of how many parcels were cut up and basically took farms out of agricultural production. And, I mean, we're not really, we say that we want to encourage agriculture, we say we want to protect it, but yet we do nothing along those lines.
And our comprehensive plan also states that growth shall occur around the villages. And as we tried to discuss that in one planning commission meeting, and it was deemed by certain members that that was charting that kind of growth because there isn't a lot of construction, in their opinion. Was not a worthwhile use of employees' time. Well, then how do we know if we're following our comp plan and if it's succeeding?
Exactly.
Well, the other challenge, as we all know, is that it's hard to get the people to continue to farm, not only in this community, but in other communities. Yeah. There are great exceptions here to that. And we're very proud of that, and we embrace that, but generally, everybody's losing their farms. And I don't know if there's anything you can do with your comprehensive plan to change that. It's a fact of economic life these days.
Well, I can testify it's pretty difficult to make a big profit on a farm. You could probably say the same thing, right?
Small
You can't change that.
The former supervisor said about 40 years ago, showed him a successful farmer, and he'll show you a man whose wife has a good paying full-time job. I don't know if this has changed much since then. Or you could say spouse, because, sometimes a woman won't pay a farmer. But it doesn't matter, it's just the same thing. It's a very difficult thing.
It's fragile.
Well, my basic point is, we are what we are because of our plan. Our plan's obviously working. We don't need to change it necessarily. Obviously, there's a few tweaks that we left out, but they're easily added in. The Democrat has been updated. And so, I honestly think it's time to move on.
I still beg to differ. I think it's been other things, other factors besides just the comp plan, because we don't use the comp plan. And our comp plan is full of generalities, so there's no way that the comp plan can
It's a
actually
plan.
be
Of course, it's generalities. It's a guidance space.
But if we ever are hauled in court, one of our defense will be that we made a certain decision based upon our comprehensive plan, and we follow our zoning ordinance. if you don't follow the plan, we don't even have a map, an updated map.
That was one of the
And that was,
major.
yeah, that was one of the things that was in the article that I read, that he suggested that we need a map.
That's a good point.
But there's been opposition on the planning commission to do this type of work. And I understand they're volunteers. Hardly anybody wants to volunteer to spend more time working for free. Look at our volunteer fire and rescue. They're telling us the opposite, that they don't have time to keep working for free. So they are wanting the tax base to pick up some of the cost of what they do so that they can devote their time to service and training. Fundraisers take an awful lot of time.
I think I heard some general consensus of an interest for a joint meeting, and the timing, I don't know that was nailed down. Perhaps it would be best for me to engage with the consultant. I plan to debrief with the consultant this week sometime. And then get some feedback from them on when they think the best time would be to discuss the letter, just before it's released or just after it's released. And with a 45-day window, there probably is still time for the board to make a decision on a joint work session at your next meeting, if it's before or after the release of this letter, and still be able to notice it and everything. Thinking would be in July, first half of July or the second half of July. Does that make sense?
More like August, 45 days, and then the board get together with notices and stuff.
Well, but I think at your July 1 meeting, there'll still be enough time forward to when the expected release date of the letter, that you could set a joint meeting then with the input from the consultant as to whether he thinks it would be valuable to have that joint session input in the formulation of his letter or after the letter.
Gotcha. That sounds very reasonable. The reason I want this discussion more than anything is because as a representative for this board on that commission, I want the result of all of this work to be something that we all feel comfortable with and can have a unanimous vote when it comes to us. So I just want some buy-in from you all, and I really do appreciate feedback. And I think a joint meeting is a great way forward.
It was a great idea to bring this topic up.
I appreciate it.
And you're right, I did vote for the consultant. I remember now.
In retrospect, I don't think it was a bad idea, Chris.
So I will discuss this with the consultant, Michelle, and I will do that, and I'll let you know what they think about timing of that, and then we'll perhaps start planning for dates, depending on how that conversation goes.
Thank you, Mr. Curry.
What about
That leaves only one item left.
Yeah, I have no idea where it is.
Well,
Go ahead.
we don't have to do it tonight. We can, and
He could be behind in traffic or something.
He drives an ambulance, his schedule is different every single week, so he could be in Pennsylvania right now, so I don't know.
Okay.
Well, let's maybe we move forward then. If I can ask everybody, please stick around for another minute or two. We have a very special presentation. This board was very moved by a commemoration ceremony by our fire and rescue community, Frank Huff, back earlier this year. And after that ceremony, we went to our representatives in the General Assembly to ask them to recognize Frank. And our Senator Mark Obenshain and our delegate Michael Weber agreed to bring that forward on the floor. Senator Obenshain's office took the lead. Should say thank you to his legislative aide, Jenny Alger. Senator Obenshain wanted to be here tonight. Unfortunately, his day job got in the way. and didn't want to hold it up, so he sent along the resolution for us. So if I may, on behalf of the board, ask Sherry if you want to come forward, I'll present this. Read it, present it. From the Senate of Virginia, Senate Joint Resolution Number 417, celebrating the life of Frank Huff. Patrons Owen Shane and Delegate Weber. Agreed to by the Senate, February 23rd, 2019. Agreed to by the House of Delegates, February 23rd, 2019. Whereas Frank Huff, a firefighter who dedicated a lifetime of service to the members of Rappahannock County community, died on December 4th, 2018. And whereas a native of Madison County, Frank Huff lived in Spurrierville and Washington before moving to Flint Hill, where he was in high school. And whereas at the age of 16, Frank Huff followed in his father's footsteps as a member of the Flint Hill Volunteer Fire and Rescue Company. He went on to hold nearly every office in the organization, including chief for more than 20 years and president. And whereas Frank Huff was one of the first shock trauma and cardiac technicians in Rappahannock County, and he served as a fire instructor and an emergency medical instructor for many years, teaching generations of fire and rescue personnel in the region. And whereas Frank Huff also offered his leadership and expertise to the Rappahannock County Fire and Rescue Association and worked tirelessly to enhance the delivery of public safety services as Deputy Emergency Services Coordinator. And whereas, in addition to serving and safeguarding the community, Frank Huff worked for a soft drink bottling and distribution company for 46 years, retiring as a vending department manager in March 2015. And whereas Frank Huff will be fondly remembered and greatly missed by his wife Sherry, his son Robbie, his sister Connie, and numerous other family members, friends, and fellow firefighters. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate, the House of Delegates concurring, that the General Assembly hereby note with great sadness the loss of Frank Huff, a dedicated firefighter and respected member of the Flint Hill community. And be it resolved further that the clerk of the Senate prepare a copy of this resolution for the presentation to the family of Frank Huff as an expression of the General Assembly's respect for his memory. Signed, Susan Clark Shar, Clerk of the Senate.
Thank you all. Thank you for being here.
Do I have the motion to adjourn? So moved.
Second.
Motion made, second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye, yes.